once you get to know her, you don't like her.
Yeah, Chad and Jennifer, I know we're at the Republican National Convention. I've been at several. You were the chairman of, I think, certainly the best convention I've ever attended, probably the best state delegation convention of Milwaukee's convention this year. And so what do you guys have for the chairman?
I think Evan, hey, it's Chad. I think we talked about 10%. You think Florida can get 10%? That was the goal as the state party, to get 10%. And if we did, I want to pat you on the back if we get to 10% winning. What are your thoughts on, is that achievable?
Yeah, with our 1.2 million vote lead, if we hold those MPAs, I think we're going to get there. I think it's going to be a big night for President Trump. And I will say, I don't like to give out predictions before it happens. Jamie knows that. But I will say this.
It's not going to keep you from trying, Chairman.
I will consistently have said this. I believe Rick Scott will win his first race by over 1%.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think he's trending towards what, a 4 or 5 point win if Trump is at 10. Jennifer, what questions do you have for the chairman?
I mean, I just want to know how you guys are feeling, and what is the feeling over there? Is it just, we're winning this and let's be excited now? What is it? What's the feel? I mean, I know the RNC was, after everything happened with the assassination attempt, and everybody was kumbaya, and it was just such a great atmosphere. What is it like there?
We're feeling the same kind of, it's almost like an RNC atmosphere again. People are extremely excited. I think there is a nervousness that exists just because you worry about Pennsylvania, you worry about Wisconsin, you worry about some of the things that have gone on in the past. And I will say the leadership of the RNC right now under Chairman Whatley and Co-Chair Trump, we're in a much better place to combat that. If you look at the lawsuits we're doing, we've been winning them also. We're keeping an eye on the election integrity ball, and I think that moves the needle also. But everyone's cautiously optimistic, but there's a lot of excitement because you're seeing what's happening in Florida. You're seeing it in some of the counties in the rural areas of some of these states like Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. And I think that people just want change.
Yeah. Do you have a county in Florida? Let's say you're in Pennsylvania. Jennifer's from Pittsburgh. A lot of people are watching us from Western Pennsylvania. Is there a county, since Florida is going to have returns here on the East Coast in 7:10? I don't think Florida gets called nationally until after 8 when the Central Time Zone counties close. But is there a county that you recommend that our folks in Pennsylvania look at and say, hey, if we're doing really well here, it kind of emulates this county in Pennsylvania, and you can kind of look at the results and kind of read tea leaves from there? Do you have some suggestions for them?
I would look at Duval, because I think that it's always been, Duval County has always voted left of Georgia and some of the other states that go up in North Carolina, Pennsylvania. And we are winning by turnout right now. If we win Duval by a decent number, I think that translates into Georgia, but it also translates into a lot of the rural areas of Pennsylvania and Wisconsin.
I agree with you. I think it's not that we have to win Duval. If we win Duval at all, I think that it is probably indicative of a good night for President Trump. One of my counties, of course, is Sumter. That's my home county, and where the home of the village is, and you can kind of look and see where retirees are headed there. And Trump really has to build his numbers there, doesn't he?
He does. I mean, Sumter is the quintessential county for us. It is the county that is growing rapidly, and it's registering more Republicans than anywhere else because people are coming from, these states that we're talking about. They're coming from Pennsylvania. They're coming from Wisconsin. They're coming from some of the Rust Belt states and moving to the villages, and because the TV commercials, I guess. But they're moving there and they're voting Republican, and it's continuing to grow in its Republican turnout.
So I didn't think we would have more than 1 million vote margin just in turnout. Chad has a question.
Oh, no, Chairman, is there inside the war room, is there another state that maybe you have your eye on? Jamie and I and Jennifer, we've been kicking around. If we do well in New Hampshire or Iowa, those are not really on the radar, they're on the swing. But if those results come in, is there other states that you guys are kind of kicking around where if you think we do really well, that it's definitely going to be a good night? What is the thumbs up if a result comes in that you think like, oh boy, it's going to be a good night?
Yeah, I think Virginia is clearly one of those places we're looking at. I think there's been serious movement in New Hampshire. And it's off the radar. It's the only state that, or it's the only territory I can talk about. But if you look at the results in Guam today, it voted 11 points for Biden. They closed at +3 for Kamala Harris today. And the Republicans made big inroads and I think may have retaken the House in Guam. So you're looking at these numbers and you're seeing some of this shift. And if we're seeing those shifts in places like Guam, I think we're probably going to see them, we'll see them in Virginia, we'll see New Hampshire. Those numbers will be indicative of what we do when we move into the other time zones. And I don't think I think we can if we run the East Coast, we don't really need to worry that much about the West Coast. I think Arizona's in great shape. And I think that in Nevada, we are doing extremely well. So I'm positive on what we're doing out there. So I think the key right here is to watch Virginia, New Hampshire, and then hope that the Pennsylvania numbers prove kind of decisive quickly.
Well, I know you read my blog, Evan, Reasonable Arguments, and thank you for that, because I wrote just that about 10 days ago, that Nevada is turning red. You can count on it. Trump's winning Nevada by about 3.5 points. I agree with you. Arizona is going to go well. Georgia is going to go well. And certainly under your leadership, Florida is going to go well tonight. Hopefully it would be incredible. I never thought we would see this, Chad, a 10-point win in a presidential race. As you know, I'm a veteran of the 2000 election, and 0.000 like 537 votes out of 6 million, whatever that equates to, but it's a lot of zeros.
My
after
first
the
name
decimal.
is Chad. So you know how many jokes I've got by Secretary Harris about hanging Chad
Yeah, right.
here in Sarasota. So I
that's
feel
great.
your pain. So
Evan, I know you're busy tonight. So do you have any closing remarks before we have to let you go? But you're welcome to stay as long as you want, but I want to be respectful of your time.
No, I first of all, I want to say thank you for everything that you've done. I read your blog. Yes, you do. You said nice things about me in the past, so I appreciate that. But if you look at what we've achieved in Florida, I am impressed. We have a great team. Our county leadership is exceptional. I just got a text from Franklin County, where our Secretary of RPOF, Christy Banks, is. They have 93% Republican turnout in Franklin County.
That's incredible.
And that's indicative of what we're doing. We've built a great team. And I think the sky's the limit. I think we're just getting started. And I think Nikki Fried was appropriate to change her logo to a panther, because Democrats in Florida are definitely an endangered species after tonight.
Well, I've not been kind to the Florida Democratic Party chair, not because I know her or dislike her, but because she's incompetent. I felt like from June, when she decided she was going to run unqualified Democrats, and Chad, I use this word very lightly. I don't call anybody unqualified. But if we just say they're unqualified by not living in the district, she decided to file Democrats against every Republican. So we had Republican legislative candidates out there talking about local issues, turning out Republican voters. And I hope we keep the supermajority. It's a little tougher in a presidential year. But Nikki Fried, I felt like, took Florida off the table a little bit back in June, when she decided to go with this crazy strategy instead of trying to be focused in her intent. But
I hope she continues serving as the chair of the Democratic Party in perpetuity. I endorse her reelection. I'll go out there.
We have an endorsement. We have news here tonight, folks. This didn't take us long. We have an endorsement of Nikki Fried from Evan Power for reelection for Florida Democratic Party chair. Listen to that, ladies and gentlemen.
breaking news.
Yeah, it's on fire.
But to your point, Jamie, is there's a candidate who's running for the Senate in Miami, who lives literally 3 miles from my house in Tallahassee.
Right.
I mean, is that real? All they did was stir up our turnout machine, and I think it helped us. So I think, to your point, is you have every legislator running that turnout operation, which only helps the team.
Yeah, and I think, tell me if I'm wrong. I certainly am willing to accept that. But, are we, they did that to try to make us spend money here in Florida, and it ended up saving Trump tens of millions of dollars, and Rick Scott tens of millions of dollars from the Senate committee that was able to be spent in places like Ohio and Michigan to try to win the U.S. Senate back.
Absolutely. And that's a great point too. And Evan, I appreciate that too, is when we save $1 here in Florida, we know we're going to get 10 points. That's $1 that goes to Ohio. That's $1 that goes to Pennsylvania. That's $1 that goes to possibly Texas, although that's a problem over there. But this is the money we save by having our party, our state party, and our chairman. We're unified. We're the #1 delegation in this country. We're the #1 delegation at that convention. And hopefully next convention, we'll be right up there in front because we're the best.
Well, and to your point, the saving of the money, in 2020 in Florida, we had over 200 staffers in the field paid for by the RNC. Do you know how many they're paying now? I think one.
Wow.
We paid some field staffers out of our own RPOF coffers, but we've been able to save the RNC tons of money by taking Florida out of play. We're a tier 2 state. But what we've done, and I'll give credit to my executive director, Bill Helmick, and my political director, Alex Pantanakis, is we built a plan, we executed that plan, and with a limited budget and limited time, because I came in on a little short notice.
Absolutely.
And we've been able to take a tier 2 state and get it to perform like it has been invested in millions and millions of dollars like it has been in the past.
I agree with you. And if we start winning some of these other U.S. Senate races, I certainly hope you get the credit you deserve. They're certainly going to hear about it here on this podcast and in my blog for the credit that you deserve for making Florida a safe Republican state and safe for freedom like you have and our friendship has over the last 20 years. So thank you so much for joining us. And like I said, you're welcome to stay as long as you want, but I want to be respectful.
No, I got to go down and watch the 7 o'clock closing because, in Florida, we report fast. We don't count for days.
I know it is quick. We're going to get some results really fast here. We're ready for them. We're ready to report them. And thank you for your service, sir. And I look forward to seeing you soon.
I look forward to it. Thank you all.
Take care.
Thanks, Evan.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Evan.
Hey, that was Evan Power. That was the chairman of the Republican Party of Florida. People getting an inside view right from the Palm Beach County Convention Center. We jumped right out of the gate and behind the scenes.
He had a big old smile on his face too. So I don't know if that's indicative of what's going on on there, but
certainly
that
indicative of what's going on in Florida.
Amazing.
I mean, it does feel great being a Floridian Republican, right? We are the #1 best party right now. If you think about it, used to be Texas maybe 20 years ago. Right now, we're it.
Yeah, it wasn't Texas 20, maybe 30 years ago. 20 years ago, I was executive director, and we were the best in the state, the best in the country. So
but
I'm
really,
never going to give that up, Chad.
Let's just keep our title, man. We're the king of the Republican Party. You can't beat us.
Yeah, it's crazy, and he's right. Nikki Fried made colossal mistakes, and Evan became chairman just this January. Usually, you have a full 2-year run up. And there were a few issues there at the Republican Party of Florida. Evan had to go in and clean house, and it was just an incredible leadership shown on his part. I didn't get finished interview.
Yeah, let's tell everybody why we're here.
Yeah, I did. So we had to jump right in. Evan kind of came in a little hot on us. So we appreciate everybody joining us tonight. And if you're just joining us, you just missed Evan Power with the Republican Party of Florida chairman. And he's going to be a national superstar by the end of tonight. Tonight, we have, I'll get back to Jennifer Bash, my beautiful bride, and Chad Turnbull, CEO and Republican National Convention delegate. And so our show tonight, we don't plan on it being conventional. First of all, Jennifer and Chad, this is our first podcast ever, and we thought, well, what the heck?
Let's get the chairman.
Let's go live for 4 hours.
Yeah. Let's just go live with some.
We'll
sit here for 4 hours and talk, and maybe somebody will watch. Hopefully, you will. But it is,
and especially me being not political.
It is ambitious. It is ambitious. So what we hope to do is do exactly what we did there with Evan, is give everybody a peek behind the curtain, and we're going to continue to do that all night long. We have somebody coming directly from the Fox News election desk who's going to share some insights later tonight from America's news station, what it's like to be behind the scenes right there in the middle of election night coverage. Now, I don't want you to forget that we'll answer your questions during this, won't we, Jennifer?
Yes,
so Jennifer,
absolutely.
Our producers, everybody's keeping track of your questions. Put them in the comments, like things, put your questions in comments, and we will try to answer them. And if we don't, we will answer all questions. I swear I will answer every single question on our Facebook page, Reasonable Arguments Podcast. If you haven't liked that, go ahead and like it. Mm-hmm. So we're going to give you commentary tonight that they're not going to see anybody anywhere else. We're going to talk about whether there.
But I think we need to say that it's not just for Florida. We're going to be we're going to be talking about other states
Oh, we're
and
definitely
other
talking-
counties
We're
and
definitely
things like that.
We're
So-
definitely talking, because the one thing I haven't shared is we're going to have podcasters. You know, I was kind of, you know, just thought, well, I'll do my part, right? And I'll try to get on podcasts. Maybe I'll get on half a dozen or something this election cycle. I was on a 42 podcast between the RNC convention. In fact, my very first podcast I did was with David and Miguel from Milwaukee, and they are the podcasters for Americans by Choice. So they're in California. They're going to come and be part of our show later tonight. Later tonight, and so we're gonna have somebody come in from Texas, give us an update on the U.S. Senate race there. We have somebody from Kansas. We have somebody from D.C. So we're touching a lot of bases here. People are going to see get a lot of information. We have a lot of information on the U.S. Senate race, U.S. House, of course, the presidential race, right? That's why everybody's watching.
Before you get into your intro, you mentioned Texas. One thing that we need to jot down is, have you been hearing any of the chatter out in Texas? It seems that Senator Cruz is a little bit ornery.
Well, that's possible.
Mhm.
What happened?
Well, with the podcasters from Texas give us some insight, but
Okay.
Definitely he does not seem happy with the former leadership with Mitch McConnell. So there was some quotes coming out. So I'd love to dive into that.
Well,
So,
I'm supporting Rick Scott for leader of the Republican caucus in the U.S. Senate. I hope we win the majority, and that leader is Rick Scott. He was such a great governor,
if
and
it's not,
a
that's a
great
big
U.S. senator.
scandal.
I mean, as you know, I mean, when these hurricanes come, he's here for us. He gets us what we need, and he did that as governor as well. So. So some of the things we're going to look at is whether there's polling bias. Some of the things I think we're going to see is was there polling bias, response bias from women, you know, showing Kamala Harris up 20 points among women. I've seen a lot of polls. They all seem to have her in that 18 to 20 range. But if that really is 13 or 14%, you know, Katie, you know, this thing's over if she's only up by 30. And you have to remember, Hillary was up 11, right? So in 2016. I think there's so much support from men that there's a couple extra points that we can give away there. Will rural counties show up? In 2016, they showed up strong for Trump. In 2020, they didn't. If you look around the country in places like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, those numbers, the margin got much closer. So we're going to look at some rural counties. And folks, what we've done is we've picked out some counties that traditionally in places like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, that they report at their county level almost immediately. So we're going to give you some ideas real quick tonight. We're going to end at 10, we think, but we're going to try to get you some information that you'll have so that you can look and say, okay, this is where Trump actually stands compared to where he was in 2016 and 2020. Of course, we know all election results will not come in tonight. And so Jennifer, I kind of fell off a ledge there a little bit, right?
Imagine that.
So we're going to talk about YouTube for a little bit. We have 10 minutes before our next guest.
Okay.
And so Jennifer, you were a first-time voter in 2016.
I was.
And why don't you tell everybody kind of what kept you from voting and why'd you decide to vote in 2016?
So I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in a small township about 15 minutes outside of Pittsburgh, and it was a Democrat township. First, let me say that I came from a family that never talked politics. We never discussed it. And really, I don't remember even growing up talking about politics, right? But living in this township, my stepfather worked for the township and he was not a Democrat. And I remember watching as, you know, he worked for the township for over 30 years. And after they would have their meetings, they would all go out somewhere and he was never invited. And I just remember, you know, just thinking just how horrible that is, because anybody who knows my stepfather knows what a wonderful man he is. So, you know, for them to treat someone like that, that is so good, just really hurt my spirits, right? It gives you that, not trusting.
You don't want to be involved.
You don't want to be involved. You don't know, you know, it's a trusting thing. So I moved out of that township, stayed in Pittsburgh, still never voted. And when I came down here, came down to Florida, so it was 2016. It was the year I turned 45, and Trump was running for president. And I can just remember sitting there, and I plead complete ignorance to politics. I didn't really know much about it. And but I remember sitting there watching the debate or whatever it was, and watching Hillary, and it made my skin crawl just watching a polished, purposely born, raised politician. And Trump, for everything that he is to me, being a Pittsburgh girl and saying things how it is, that is what I most appreciated from him, is that I knew no matter what, whether it was good, bad, or ugly, we were getting the truth, whether we liked it or not, whatever it was. So yeah, I voted for him my first time. And, I laugh now when I see this, women voting for Kamala just because she's a woman. It's just crazy to think that, because whatever Trump said, or, how he harasses women or whatever it may be, the rape charge that was out there, I had guy friends my whole life, and they have done some really stupid stuff in their life. And I've seen them not necessarily be nice to women all the time. And, I don't think that that's a reason to say, it's not a popularity contest. We are hiring, we are giving this person a job to run our country. And I think that's what people are not thinking about when it comes to this election. They are turned off by his personality, and because Kamala is a woman, and that's why they're now, voting for prom queen.
And now you're married to a political genius. What's that like? No, I'm kidding. Chad. So
Jed's kicking him under the table right now. I was going to bring a red card and a yellow card, but I think what we're going to do is just, okay, you got one.
That wasn't even the notes.
One demerit.
Yeah, a warning here.
So Chad.
And that's why they're voting for a woman.
So Chad, this is your first time going to a Republican National Convention.
Yes.
Give people a little idea of, number one, what motivated you. Number two, what did you expect? And number three, how did it meet or exceed those expectations?
Well, let's start with just the convention. And if I can tell anybody that has the opportunity to go to a national convention, especially the Republican National Convention, it's an honor to sit on the floor and be one of 2,000 people casting your vote for the future president of the United States, for your party that you've grown up on. That was like, I didn't care. That's something I wanted to do. I was very privileged to do it. My good buddy Mike Holderness and I out of Sarasota, we both were first-time people, and we didn't get involved in local politics, but of course I know a ton about politics. But just going to the convention and meeting all the good people, if you are a Republican and you want a little boost, or if you want to know why you're a Republican, just go around and talk to everybody. It's funny, Evan talked about the people from Guam. Well, Guam was over my left shoulder, and let me tell you, they had wonderful outfits. They were very upbeat.
Now, some people, they coordinate their outfits for convention. Did Guam do that?
Guam had their outfits. I think Florida needs to up their outfits a little bit. I think next time,
Texas, one year we did the Turnpike shirts, like the ones you see with the Turnpike people wear.
I think just flip-flops and maybe some board shorts. Let's keep it loose. We're Florida.
Yeah.
Come on. Let's just be honest with ourselves. But what time is our next guest? Do we have a couple minutes?
We do have a few minutes, unless he's in the waiting room.
He is live.
Let's bring him in then.
Okay.
Fine.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Our next guest is Michael Holderness, who you just mentioned. What a great segue. A great segue for Michael Holderness. Yeah. And Michael Holderness, also a first time.
Look at that picture.
Look at that picture.
Look at that delegate badge.
I wonder who took that picture.
First time delegate to the Republican National Convention, a long-time Sarasotan, a guy who's joining us tonight, even though his business been beat the heck and gone from 2 hurricanes out at Beachside Management. And so, Michael, are you going to Halloween? What's going on there?
He got his teeth whitening. I can tell that.
Oh, wait, we can't hear him.
He's
You're
on
on-
mute.
You're on mute.
You're
Hold
on
on
mute,
one
Mike.
second.
So Mike is also the owner of Big Tiki Hut in Siesta Key, which got slammed by back-to-back hurricanes, and we felt bad. He must have had about 8 feet of sand over there, and as soon as he cleaned it out, the next storm came. So Mike needs his shoulder rubs. I feel bad for him. He's a small business owner, longtime Florida man, and just a great human being. He was a big pleasure. I spent 3 days with the man, got to know him very intimately, him and his girlfriend. And I couldn't speak more highly of him. So if we need anybody in politics or anybody that needs to get involved, it's Mike Holderness.
And if he's still working on the mute situation, you know, the Big Tiki, I don't know if you've been there, but I'm going to give a plug for that because it is what's the singer who's so great there. We love to go listen to.
Oh, Casey on the Key.
Casey on the Key is
Absolutely.
there. She's a regular. Go out and see Casey on the Key, have a nice cocktail, and it's really one of the best Siesta Key. I think it's the best Siesta Key Village experience, and you know you might even run into the famous Michael Holderness,
I
which
know.
we're going to hear from any second.
You know, it'd be great too if Mike maybe sponsored maybe an upcoming election party, or maybe we have a politician at the Big Tiki. We do an event there. Maybe we can twist his arm. If there's anybody coming up in the next 2 years that might be running for an office,
Yeah,
let's hold a party at the Big Tiki Hut. Let's keep it loose. Let's keep it Florida.
Yeah.
When Mike gets on there, Mike, what do you think about doing an event at the Big Tiki Hut for one of your politicians that you think might win or that you like to sponsor?
I think I heard him say yes.
Is Mike there?
There he is.
He's still muted.
he's back.
Well,
Is he muted on his phone?
He's muted on his phone.
Michael, if you can hear us, you're muted on your phone.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, he can.
Yep.
Oh, he's unable to. Okay.
well,
All right. Well, Michael, we're glad we got to see you.
it was a great tour of the office. So
I'll tell you, his tie looked great. You don't see him in one of those very often.
I didn't even know you owned one. So,
Well,
so
did you even see him in a tie at the
I
national
think you borrowed
convention?
one of mine. So
Yeah. So what we might do now is look at Nate Silver's from the polling. I think we have a little polling folder that we have some stuff in that might come up.
Can I have the
And Nate Silver's final predictions of swing states. And we are about 19 minutes away from polls closing in Florida. So that should be.
which one are we looking at?
So I will tell you, Jamie, you're asking me more or less how I got involved in politics. So throughout the years, when I was 18, I don't know if you remember George Pataki.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So
Governor
I
of
got
New York.
involved. Yep. When I was trying to find out my role in there. So, but George Pataki, and then I moved on to Elizabeth Dole, her campaign. So there was a whole bunch of things going on. And then I moved out west in 2000 to Arizona State and got involved in local politics out there. So are we going on to Nate?
Yeah.
No,
So-
I want Chad to finish the story. Go ahead.
No, we're good.
No, go ahead. Finish your story. I'm interested.
I'm fine. I was
Okay.
Okay. We've got time. So one of the things we wanted to talk about, are we gonna be able to put that graphic up on? We have the poll closing graphic up, so you can kind of see polls closing in Florida. Is that graph up on the
No,
screen?
that's what we're seeing.
It is. Okay, so the poll closings on the screen. Is the other one on the screen? The Nate Silver one that's in the polling folder. So at 7 o'clock, we'll start getting some election results. But until then, we have Nate Silver writes the Silver Bulletin on Substack. He is a Democrat, but I do like he's a guy who's like the numbers are the numbers. He's a former model. He modeled the elections for the New York Times, and so you can see his final predictions. And I think one of the things that you want to look at when you're looking at this, I look at the trends of where votes are going, and that's that final column on the right. where you say the change from last month, you know, while or change from last week. I don't know that I trust the last week numbers as much as I do over the last month numbers, but when you start looking at these swing states, you know, you look at Florida has 6.4, you know, Democrat plus, I guess it says 0.1 there in Florida over the last week. I think that's a pipe dream. You know, Texas is trending Republican and towards a 7-point win. What jumps out from you there, Chad? I mean, we talked about Iowa a little bit.
No, I mean, I think the thing that's most important here, especially in the polling, is if the GOP wins Pennsylvania, it's more or less checkmate. There's very few paths that the Democrats can get. And looking at this change from last month being plus 2.3, and with the Democrats being only margin is 0.8, that's super encouraging. I mean, you win Pennsylvania, you get the 20 votes. I don't see anything happening. The only problem is you're not going to know what's happening in Pennsylvania until maybe 5 days from now, which is a travesty. The other thing that's encouraging, if you look at that, is North Carolina. You just go down the list. You look at North Carolina. If the southern half of North Carolina, the Wilmington area, the Brunswick area, with all the new voters out there, all the new people also. I mean, one thing that I always, I'm also a researcher. So one thing that I always look at is when they do these models, what are they taking in? And my feedback from my talking with a lot of people is the under 25 person, are they being accounted in these models? Because under 25, I mean, that could be 10% of the vote right there. But if they're not figuring out how to get to them or how to survey them in the proper technique, you have 1 or 2 percentage points right there. And that's where I like the red column. I like all the pluses, but historically, the Republican Party has always underpolled. And to be ahead so far right now, or very close, if I was a Democrat looking at this, and this is a Democrat pollster, I would be super, super concerned, concerned.
So there was, you know, as we led into the election, there's been a lot of talk about polling error, right? Of course, 2016, they showed a lot of polling error. 2020, polling error, like you said, they undercounted or underpolled Republican, or they weren't able to get through the clutter of asking the right questions to make sure they were getting delivering the results. And some of these numbers were incredibly, you know, in some of these states, swing states, they were 5, 6, 7% different. They had, didn't we have some of those, some of those states where we showed the difference in the county. So we don't want to necessarily switch the thing on the, no, you're good. We don't want to necessarily want to switch it from the screen, but so Nate Silver's final forecast, if you add all those up, it would have given Trump a win of, I think, 282, 200, something like that, electoral
A win's
votes.
a win. A win is a win.
So yeah. So, and I think you're right that New Hampshire probably comes into play, and we're going to see some things now.
You know, but
Georgia,
states
Indiana,
like
Kentucky, South Carolina, Vermont, and Virginia are about to close.
But you got to remember, I mean, Jamie, I'm from the Northeast. So when I talk to my friends back in, let's say, New York, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and if you're a Republican, you're still being shamed in 2024. So I think people are just not going to say closet Trumpers or closet GOP, but they're just tired of being shot out. Like during COVID, that's why so many people moved out of the Northeast, because of just overreach, and everybody fled down there.
And you're one of them, right?
I am one of them. Proud Floridian, 4 years in the making. I made it 4 years to the national convention as a Floridian. I am a diehard Floridian. So sorry I didn't wear flip-flops today. But if you look at polling, and this is why I think we're here, and this is what you don't really hear on CNN, is they hide these facts that when I call it voter suppression, that they're making you think that, hey, and this is what happened in 2020, I think we were overconfident in 2020 that we were going to win. Everything was happening. So a lot of misinformation came out. But if you're still afraid to say who you vote for in this country because you're going to get yelled at dinner parties, or the narrative is now shifting. where I think the new generation, the people that had went to school during COVID, the people that have gone through wokeness, the people that are getting hit in the chest by a transgender volleyball player, I think these are the people that are saying, sorry.
Well, and I think you bring up a good point about those under the age of 25. My sons are in their 30s, early to mid 30s, and they had 3 years. They've had 3 years only of a great American economy, only 3 in their entire adult life. And so if you think, well, since they were out of college, 22, so in the last 10, 12 years, there's only been 3 years of a great American economy. That's under Trump. And when my sons look at it, I think they're kind of taking, well, the bag's half, the glass is half full. And, but another one takes it as the glass is half empty. Right. And so one looks at it and says, listen, I don't know that politics has anything to do with it. I don't care. I'm going to vote this way or that way. And the other is, hey, we saw this good economy under Trump, and so that's where I'm going to go. But if you look at somebody who's 25 over the last 8 years, their entire life, right, their entire adult life, they've had 3 good years, and they know where it came from. They know exactly where it came from. It came from Donald Trump's economy, and that was because he reduced energy costs, he reduced regulations, and he took government out of our lives when and where he could, because we know that burden is a cost on every American. Those burdens are a cost on every American.
I would like to ask the audience, if anybody is maybe a first-time voter under 25, if you want to type in maybe a question or tell us why you voted for reasons, or did COVID affect you, or being under the tyranny of government where you couldn't go outside, or you had to wear a mask to go to the supermarket, or you weren't allowed to go to church. People forget that they were closing synagogues and churches across the Northeast. You weren't allowed to go out there. And if you were only allowed certain amounts. How about gym ownerships? You weren't even allowed to use a gym. They closed how many businesses? So if you were 16 at the time, now it's your first time that you can vote. If you're on there, by all means, just hit up Jennifer and we'll put you on air for 2 or 3 minutes. So.
All right. So we are a few minutes from polls closing. The other data I think that we had in there was the Real Clear Politics, which was the same folder, and RCP average. So this is much like, but it shows if we can get that one on air. It's in the same polling folder, and it's called the RCP average, and it looks at 2016, 20, and 24. So the polling error that we had in those elections, they showed Biden winning the national by 7.9%, Clinton by 4.3%. They didn't reach anywhere near that. We're going to break down some of this data as we get down into these counties, as these polls start closing and we start getting some county data here in just a few minutes. And Pennsylvania, Biden barely won in 2020, and they had the polling average had them at 3.6%. Ohio, they had Biden winning Ohio in 2020 by 0.2%. Interestingly enough, since 1892, I don't know if you know this, it's kind of a weird little piece of trivia in the head.
I might know it.
Okay, what is it?
No Republican has ever won the White House without winning Ohio.
Okay, so there's only been 2 who have won. Ohio's only been wrong 3 times since 1892. There were 2 Democrats who lost Ohio and won the White House. Franklin Delano Roosevelt in 1944 and John F. Kennedy in 1960. Both lost Ohio and won the White House. There's only been 1 person who's won Ohio and lost the White House. Donald J. Trump in 2020. And isn't that a crazy stat? And here you have, a Real Clear polling average that has, in 2020 had Joe Biden winning Ohio. And of course, he didn't win Ohio. Donald Trump won it by about 2 points.
When you say Ohio, do you just want to say OH?
No, I do not. The one thing, if you go back to the Gator glory days in the early part of this century, the one thing that we knew in both football and basketball is that Ohio was the second best team in the country twice. So because we owned them in both of those, both football and basketball for a national championship.
Jamie, moving down to Florida, let me tell you, there's certain things I just didn't know what to do. IO, you go around. I had no idea what this was, and I mean, I figured it out real quick.
You find it out in Florida?
Oh yeah, and so welcome to SEC world. So I mean,
They have a great band.
I mean,
well, they're not in the SEC, but
we're in SEC land. Big,
a lot more college football than in Brooklyn. That's for sure.
So that's
So are we? We do not have any. We're still 7 minutes away from the election results, babe.
Okay.
So.
Oh, here's a trivia question.
We could see if Mike Holderness wants to come back in. He's on standby again.
Well,
okay.
Oh yeah, let's try. Yeah, let's
try
bring him.
For sure.
It's his 10 minutes. We're trying to trying to fill.
See if he found some light.
Which state has the most?
Can you hear me now?
Hey, there's Michael Holderness, ladies and gentlemen. Michael Holderness.
How you doing, Jamie Miller?
I'm doing well. We gave a big plug for the Big Tiki. The Big Tiki's open, right?
Yeah, the Big Tiki's open for business. We got it open. We had the grand reopening last Saturday.
Oh, great. That's good to hear.
So where are you, Michael?
We're in front of the Hyatt. We're just getting here to the big event. Smiles going around everywhere.
So what is the big event?
The big Trump event.
Whose party is it? Can you tell us?
Yeah. You want to go inside and take a look? Or
Yes,
you guys
absolutely.
on the air.
That's why people are joining us, is for a peek behind the curtain.
Yeah.
And do you have your badge on?
I do have my badge.
Yes.
That's my man.
Flips
That's
up,
my man.
proud. The sense of unity here, though, is honestly, it's really outstanding. It was a lot like we felt at the RNC, where it was more everybody coming together for a common goal, and all this self-serving interest put aside, and it's a really, really a good feeling.
Hey, fellow delegate.
Today feels a lot better than tomorrow feels a lot better than yesterday did.
Mike, while we have you on the air, can you tell us a little bit about your experience at the RNC?
Oh, the experience? Well, you'll know too. It was absolutely phenomenal. The energy, the vibration in that room was something that I haven't felt in a very long time. And it was just really, really nice seeing people come together and uniting in that, it felt like America is what it felt like.
So, Michael, do you have predictions for tonight? Like and I know Trad has some for some congressional races that we're going to get into here in just a couple of minutes, but what predictions do you have? How much does Donald J. Trump win Florida by?
Florida? It's going to be 66, 67%, if not 70.
That's pretty bold. That's pretty
bold. I truly believe will be 60% across the board.
That would be incredible. That'd be a historic win. Yeah. If he's at 60, you could turn the lights out across the nation. The whole night's over.
Yeah, we will know tonight. We really will know tonight. I feel that it's coming. When it comes to the vice president, I think the rattlesnakes in her camp are the women. I think the women, even if they're anti-Trump, they're voting for Trump, and that's going to be something to be seen. But that's my prediction. There's a lot of
I tend to agree with you. I know that
out there, and they're going to vote for Trump, and they might not tell their friends.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think there's a lot of women who are voting pro-choice for sure. But I think there's a lot of women who are voting pro-sons as well. And, when you have somebody who's unqualified to be commander in chief, the way the Democrats ordained Kamala Harris, you really end up with a kind of a problem where, nobody trusts her to go to war. I mean, she has not explained yet, who she is, what she stands for, what she's going to do, or why she should be president. And, when you start thinking about that and apply it to foreign policy and what's that mean for my children, And are my children going to get drafted to go to war? We know that just 10 days ago, 10,000 North Koreans joined the Russian army in Ukraine. And, you know, the war over there is building, not under this administration. It is not diminishing. And yet the mainstream media, you know, unless you're on a program like this, nobody even knows that 10,000 North Koreans have joined the war in Ukraine with on the side of the Russians. So, you know, it is incredible that those types of major issues that she's unqualified to handle just got swept under the rug in the last 2 weeks of the campaign.
I could not agree with you more. I really couldn't. What we have now, we're in a time where it's time for a change, and I think that everybody feels that way. And we're going back. We saw what he did in his first term, and this term the handcuffs are off. And what I mean by that is he's really going to get things done that's needed for this country and the sustainability of this country. I mean, you know, and bullets don't kill superheroes because they walk with divine intervention. He's bringing back God and he's talking about it. And that's what needs to happen because it's the Christian values that we live by. And that's the heart of this country.
Yeah, I mean, Mike, you even look at me and you. I mean, we're kind of novice. I mean, you know, kind of getting into politics. And me and you ended up on the front row in the RNC because we were so fired up with what's happening with the country. I mean, we need more men and women like us to get involved locally. We need more men and women like us to speak our mind, to use the word divinity in some of your comments, Christian values. We need to bring it back. And I think that's what we're doing tonight. Hopefully the rest of the country doesn't want any more transgender volleyball players spiking their ball into their child's chest and putting them in the ER. It's about time we fight back a little bit.
Yeah, and Chad, you did a wonderful job there at the RNC. I mean, you brought the energy, and you felt it like I did, the sense of unity and what's right for this country. We don't want women and men and women's sports. Come on now. I would never think in a million years we'd be talking about men and women's sports. I mean, that's just insane. We gotta, you know, it's hard. It's
men and women's prisons.
We need to protect,
you know, like
women,
go down the list.
At the same time, we need and it's their choices, but we don't need men and women in sports.
No, I mean, again, going back to the RNC in Milwaukee. I mean, Mike, if you remember, I mean, it was hard to tell on TV, but when Israel got mentioned or in the audience, I mean, I'm sure CNN didn't play any of that, but our section in Florida was the loudest. I mean, we were all about Israel. And if you think about the only democracy in the Middle East and our probably number one ally in the entire world is Israel, the only party that's really supporting Israel is the GOP.
Yeah.
So if you're a Democrat,
yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. There's too many people dying, unnecessarily dying, and we need to keep our allies safe, and we need to protect them as well. It starts with America. We can't protect anybody, and we can't unite and join forces with anybody if we're not strong.
You know, Michael, you said, you know, the feeling there, it feels like America, and it actually it gave me chills because, you know, it maybe because I'm been thrown into politics in the last 4 years being with Jamie, but I never really realized the amount of anger that comes from this. And, you know, I have had friends, two specific friends, 30 plus years that we've been friends who actually unfriended me from Facebook because when we were at the RNC, we got back from the RNC and, you know, it was one of those things, you know, you don't see somebody around and you go check and you realize that they've unfriended you. And it's just, you know, it's amazing to me that politics that it's like this. I mean, you have people that live together and, you know, hate, you know, one has one football team, the other one has another football team. You know, I mean, Jamie he thinks his Black Eyed Peas are the best things in the world. I think they're horrible.
I like that band.
But the food.
Come over on New Year's Eve, buddy. You're gonna,
you know what I mean? But we're not hating each other, and we're not, you know, trying to tear our country apart because of it. And it's just really, it's really disheartening how much anger there is when it comes to politics, when in all honesty, I think everybody wants the same outcome, but you know, how we get there is just tearing everything apart, which is just horrible.
Well, it's great shows like yours, Jamie's, and you guys coming on and doing this. You're getting the word out, and those people will come around. They'll definitely come around. It's just the chatter right now. There's a lot of negative chatter that's been going on the last 4 years. As soon as that negative chatter stops, people will just come back together. And that's what they're very divisive. techniques been used on the people, and it's like they're just almost brainwashed. I don't know what's going on, but I can tell people are starting to come back together, and they will. They will. Trump's going to win tonight, and we can stop these silly wars and stop the. How many people died over in Ukraine? 500,000 men, maybe more. I don't know at this point, but it's just sad. These people do not have to be dying when we have such a great country that can, kind of keep the troublemakers at bay.
Well, thank you for coming on. I know they're about to open the doors there, and the big rush to a big successful.
I thought he was taking us in.
Oh, are you going in?
I
Are
thought
you
he was taking
inside?
us backstage.
Oh, I'm out front now, but I'll take you in. Come on.
Give
Go for it.
the
Don't forget
audience how Sarasota does it. So
Don't forget to take us in.
You might not be able to hear us, but
Polls have just closed in the eastern portion of Florida, so we're going to wait on a couple of these results here.
hey, I just want to give a shout out. We finally got the chat up where I can see it. So to Jonathan Hogue, Amber. Hi, Amber. I know
Amber.
your heart's going out to Michael, but we love you anyway. And Travis, thank you for joining us. And again, if there's anybody out there that has comments or questions, we can see them now. So please send them, and we will get anything answered for you that we need.
Is it kind of loud in here, guys?
well, we'll just do the video just to give the people, how
Kinda
the
loud
mood
in
is.
here.
So,
Kind of loud. You want to take that over, babe?
well,
All right, we're going in, Jamie.
All right, that's what we're waiting for. We love it.
Hey, how are you?
yeah,
There was Vicky Brill in attendance.
another Sarasodian. Well,
This reminds me of like the show Cops, right?
Yeah,
like a
bad
wait,
boys,
well,
bad boys.
wait,
Yeah.
What you
wait
gonna
for
do?
somebody to start chasing him and
Yeah.
put
Well, we
handcuffs
can
on him.
definitely say that Michael will not be our next production person when it comes to the podcast.
Yeah,
Maybe
no.
tell him to flip his camera.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, please don't.
Michael,
Yeah,
flip your
so-
camera if you can, so it's not looking at you anymore.
I mean, you are a good-looking man,
Yeah,
but
oh,
we
he just
yeah.
got in the light.
So,
Now look
yeah.
at this. He just got in the light.
I didn't recognize him. He's got the tie
There.
on. So.
There you go. Perfect.
There we
babe.
go.
What's that?
So this is downtown Sarasota. This is the Hilton.
Hyatt.
Sorry, the Hyatt. And that is a pretty good turnout right now.
Look at the balloons. I love it.
Yeah, they should be pretty excited.
Yep.
Here, Sarasota County, we have partial results in, but it's a lot of results. And Donald Trump up 12 points in Sarasota County by more than 28,000 votes. You have to remember Barack Obama in 2008 almost won Sarasota County. He came within about 400 votes of winning. So a 28,000 vote victory here in Sarasota, or trending towards something like that, is a huge victory. And interestingly enough, we have not 28, but 29,000 for Rick Scott, which is probably unexpected, because I think most people would think that there's a little bit of a drop off between the win rate. And if you look at if you're on we're not showing this, but, and I don't know that you guys probably get bored by watching it, but Donald Trump is currently at 123,000 votes, and Rick Scott 122. So hardly any drop off in Republicans, but yet 95,000 votes for Harris and 93,000 so twice as many people have dropped off. Democrats dropped off when going to the U.S. Senate race, which gives Rick Scott that larger portion of victory. So it looks like, just looking at Sarasota County, Rick Scott and Donald Trump could trend in the same direction and be neck and neck when it comes to not total raw votes, but percentage of wins. So Chad, when you said earlier Donald Trump at 10, I was like, oh, maybe Rick Scott's at 7, trailing by 3. These results would say that I'm wrong and you're right, that both of them would trend towards that 10 or 12 points win tonight. But we're going to look at some other votes as we go along. I'm going to give that back to Jennifer. So did we lose Michael, or is he still with us?
He's still there if you want us to switch back.
Yeah,
Yeah, let's just switch back real quick, Michael, and we're going to sign off here. it's a great shot of the
Hey,
patio.
I just want to say that we got Roz on the line now. He's
Oh, yeah.
saying, "Hi, guys and gals, joining you from Oyster Bay, Long Island."
Oyster Bay, the home.
Hi, Roz. You better be smoking a cigar.
Hey, Roz, how are you
So-
doing? Thanks for joining us.
Oh, Scott's here too.
There we go.
Hey,
So,
Scott.
from Staten Island, Scott from Staten Island.
Scott from Staten Island.
That'd be nice to hear the New York contingency calling in. So
Yeah, gonna
We
win a
got
couple
Chad's
extra
people coming in.
Mhm.
winning a couple extra congressional seats up there.
Oh, we got
And,
a battle. We got a battle.
maybe you want to try to
So,
go over to Cobb County real quick, and then
Yeah.
we're gonna I think we're gonna say goodbye to
Mike.
you, Michael.
Anyway, Mike, thanks for calling in, man. It's always a blast having you.
And so at 7:15 we have our next guest, and my guess is that she will call in probably right at 7:15 would be my guess. She's not there yet, right? Okay, so when she pops in, just let me know, and we'll go directly to her, because we have a surprise guest coming directly from the Fox News election desk. I think she's going to break away. She may be a little flexible. We maybe need to be a little flexible in the time, but are we seeing any results from, let's say, like Cobb County?
I don't know where they have their information.
Okay,
So I'm on here, but there's nothing.
election 2024 down at the very bottom.
That's this page.
Okay.
So we're there.
And then just go up to the box and type in election results, see what comes up.
But it is surprising. I mean, I'm not going to say surprising, but it's encouraging how well Sarasota has done with Rick Scott and Trump, the early votes. Another thing, Jamie, too, is that have you looked at any of the data about GOP and the early voting?
Yeah, that's Evan Power went over a little bit of that earlier, the chairman of the
I
Republican
mean-
Party of Florida. It's incredible what a difference 4 years makes.
I mean, I think I read something. What are we at? Like 70% of early voting now? Everybody casts their votes, about 70%.
Yeah, so 70 about total, and then we were going into election day with something like 3.5 million Republicans voting,
Mhm.
and really about 1.2, 1.3 million super voters left to vote.
Yeah.
And so it'll be interesting to see if those super voters continue to come up and vote.
But I always found it interesting. I mean, if you look at early voting back in the day, where kind of the word around the street was, don't do early voting. You don't know what's happening. You don't know what's going on. To me, and if anybody that's listening, how amazing it is to vote, at least in Sarasota County, I can only speak to Sarasota County, is that you walk into your voting district, your precinct, you give them your driver's license or an identification card. They verify, do you live at this address? They give you a ballot. You go to a machine. You fill out your ballot with a pen. You stick it into the ballot machine. And it's almost like your standardized testing scores. If there's a stray mark anywhere on there, and the reason I know this is because I took my pen and put it on there, that ballot does not count. If there is any imperfections in that ballot, you have to go out, seal your ballot, get another ballot, sign a document, and then go back to the voting station.
Right.
I mean, to me, there is no fraud. I mean, it's where else do you can just walk in and get a ballot? Nowhere you can walk in and just get a ballot. New York,
Right.
without ID.
Yeah.
You just have to scribble your name on something.
So
on a ledger.
Jennifer, we're going to put a pin in that for a second. Why don't you tell a little bit of your story about, because if Morgan comes in, we're going to go to her.
Mhm.
And then I see we have another guest who has shown up. So we've got a lot of guests for you here tonight. And so you spoke a little bit earlier about your reasons for wanting to support Donald Trump in 2016 and him motivating you to vote. And then here you are in the epicenter of Republican politics in Milwaukee this summer in July at the Republican National Convention. And, we happened to be in with Senator Gruters, Evan Power, some others
Mhm.
Saturday when what happened, and I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, it was. We were in the skybox at Brewers Stadium, and I think it was Sydney that kept trying to call Joe and tell him what happened. And we finally got the news that about the assassination attempt, and we quickly turned on the TV that was in the skybox, and nobody knew what was happening. I mean, until we saw him stand up and do the fight thing. It was I think everybody's heart dropped. You could hear a pin drop in that room. And So going forward to Monday, sitting at the RNC, and our seats were one level up directly behind where Trump was sitting, and
in the balcony, right above
yeah,
the president's seat.
But I probably could have thrown a rock, and it probably would have gotten
You
there.
could have, I could not have.
And I just remember looking at the back of his head, and the feeling of vulnerability that I felt within myself of him sitting there surrounded by thousands and thousands of people. There's the video up right there. After his life was just almost taken from him.
That's a good picture of the ear bandage, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, like I said, the feeling that I felt of vulnerability, I can't imagine being him and having your life that close, almost being taken away from you, and then having the courage to come out and sit in that seat for the rest of the RNC.
Well, and have how many hundreds? I mean, we weren't alone in those seats. There were thousands of people in that balcony who he had his back to that entire time. And you wrote an incredible Facebook post that we'll put on the Reasonable Arguments podcast Facebook after this, but it was just such a touching. I kind of looked over at you at one point,
and you tried talking to me while I was typing,
and I could see the emotion on your face, and I thought,
right,
well, are you okay? And I was like, are you okay? And you're like, hush, I'm writing, like I usually say to you, like, you come into the office and I'm like, stop, I'm writing, like, leave me alone.
I get emotional thinking about it, because it was, I don't know how any other person would have reacted. Because I was thinking, okay, if someone just tried to, shoot me in my head and hit my ear, would I even want to leave the house? I mean, would I even want to run for president? Why am I doing this if there is a literal target on my back? And, it just, the amount of respect that I had for him in that moment of sitting there and having his back to me, which I know it wasn't just to me, but that's how I felt. And, I wanted to do everything to protect him. It was just a really weird feeling of vulnerability and just protection of just how strong this man is to come out and be with his supporters, because he knew we needed to see him.
Yeah, so
right.
Is how I feel.
When I was down there with the Suns junior, and you could tell the anger that they had on their face, especially with reporters about, everything, asking silly questions after their father almost got murdered by about a centimeter.
Yes.
I mean, if that didn't fire up the base or fire up everything going on, then, it's one of those life moments where, holy moly. I mean,
then you get on social media and people are making fun of it. Oh, it's a shame it wasn't just an inch the other way. And, they should have been a better shooter. It's astonishing how people turn so angry and so hateful. I don't know how, being a human being, you can do that.
I mean, and if you think about it, being at the convention, I mean, I can only speak for myself, but there wouldn't be a chance in this world if our president, Joe Biden, got close to assassination that I wouldn't pray for him, or I'm rooting for the bullet to go the other way.
Don't you do it? Football teams. Look at football teams.
Yeah.
I mean, even the stands clap when the other team gets up.
I mean,
if they're hurt.
Are we not Americans? So people that are writing this, and this is what's wrong with the left ideology, is that they're actually rooting for murderers to take down, our political figures. I mean, are we in a banana republic? No, we're in the United States. And you have so many people that are rooting for death of our leaders. Just because you disagree with us about certain political situations doesn't mean that you should be writing.
You just don't even like his personality.
Yeah.
You want him dead because you don't like his personality.
And it encourages people. I mean, that shooter is 17, 18 years old. I mean, there's a lot of 18-year-old kids that could be influenced. We don't need the left championing these ideologies. So
yeah, and then these people will be going to church on Sunday, and it just
I don't think they go to church. So
yeah, and it was a very surreal moment for me, especially because I didn't even I fought about going to the RNC, probably because Jamie told me I needed 3 different outfits for the day. I needed to wear comfortable shoes. You should wear tennis shoes. Well, any girl knows you can't wear tennis shoes with a dress outfit. I mean, it's stupid, but so that whole
Carrie Bradshaw does that pretty good.
yeah. Well, she's no longer on the air. So, but yeah, but I'm so glad that I went. It was one of the most humbling experiences, and to be a part of that history was just, it was something I will never forget. And so thank you, Jamie, for forcing me to go. I appreciate it.
Well, anytime, baby.
Yes, absolutely.
So we don't have our guest on Zoom yet, right?
No.
Okay, so we do have our in-studio guest.
Mhm.
And we're so happy she's here. Teresa Mast is from Sarasota County. She's running for county commission, and we will bring her on here. I think you're.
Yeah, yep, there we go.
So here's Teresa Mast, and I think we're going to just kind of put you in the hot seat right here, Teresa, right here in the middle. And great red dress and excitement going on here. So thank you so much for joining us.
Well, I appreciate
How
you
much
having me.
time do we have with you?
Well, you
It's just,
have,
I have.
I think
we
you're
have a
in
little bit of
charge.
time,
I think
yeah.
you're in charge of the time. I'm not. So
Well, it probably depends on more on our Zoom guest, because
it.
she's coming from the Fox News, and that doesn't mean that you can sit through that if you want. If she happens to pop in, we're gonna pop to her. But if
Jamie,
but
we got pretty ladies coming in and out. I mean, we're the
I-
luckiest guys.
I
here.
know,
So,
look
I
at
mean,
this.
come
They're
on.
fighting over
So,
us, tooth and nail.
Unbelievable.
So
I didn't see any fighting going on.
not in your race, not in your race. So so how do things look, and this is your what, second or third time running for office?
This is my second time. I ran for school board
Right. Okay.
and ran against a 20-year incumbent. Had the closest race there's ever been in Sarasota County against a 20-year incumbent, and fell short. Completely had the bug, and just waiting for my time when I felt like it was right, and this was right. And I'm very honored to be able to say that I will be the next seated Sarasota County Commissioner for District 1. So it feels
Yeah.
really good.
Good. Well, we're certainly glad that you've decided to continue. You know, so many people run one time and they get kind of a bad taste, right? And I know
It
that
is
you,
brutal.
I know
It
you
is
got a
brutal.
bad taste after that school board race because it was so close. And
It actually taught me a lot, though. I think it was very beneficial because I think you learn very quickly that it is a very cutthroat process, as you know very well. It's not something that is for the lighthearted.
me, no, I don't.
And it's something that you have to be very willing to give it everything you have. You have to have the support of your family. You have to have the support of, I call the very tight inner circle, and just be very, very diligent about how bad do you want it and
Well,
how hard are you willing to fight?
You know, when you and I have talked about it in the past, I always say there's the three areas of your life that politics can really impact, both positively and negatively.
Mhm.
It's your personal, your professional, and your political. And win or lose, I always say that I like to try to run campaigns that people come out all in good shape in all three, because I've had candidates who have lost their political campaign, and yet they've excelled in future politics. Their business excelled, their personal life excelled. And then I've had people who have won a political race, but they did it in such a way that they really kind of hamstrung their way going through. And the race that you've run here in Sarasota County, I think positions you well to do very well in all three areas, because you ran this race with an incredible amount of integrity.
I
And
appreciate that.
yeah.
That was my goal. I really sought very, very hard. My team was absolutely phenomenal. I cannot say enough about the love of my life of 40 years. He was with me every step of the way. Our daughters were extremely supportive. I had an incredible political team that fought really hard, and we made sure that the integrity of our race was a very clean race. We made sure that I was well represented in my values, my faith, and obviously my political views. And so I'm very excited.
Well, and you know, like 2 months ago, I spoke to you. It's like, well, when you're a commissioner, I really want to talk to you about opening Midnight Pass. And here we are now at 9 feet of water flowing through there
And look,
every
God
couple
did it
times a
for
day.
us,
It
right?
got
It's
It was happened naturally.
we still have
So-
some work to do to make sure it stays open,
Yes, we do.
and some things like that. So we're going to appreciate your help with that. And but it's just kind of funny how politics can change so quickly, you know,
Overnight.
and that storm is indicative, kind of, if you want to, an analogy of how quickly politics can change. And have you seen results from your race yet?
Well, I have not looked at the numbers, but
I was trying to bring
I
them
know, I
up.
know my husband is over there.
I was trying to bring them up, but I
know my husband is over there looking at
I
numbers. and
didn't
So
when I first brought it up. Come on around, John. Listen, this is not we're not TV news. So when I brought up the site, it has County Commission District 3, but it doesn't show County Commissioner District 1. So I don't know if you have results or if you've seen results that you want to share.
Think that
But
probably not going to show because her write-in dropped,
oh, okay.
so that I don't know if they're going to tally the votes.
So
anyway.
so you're in.
I'm in.
She's
Oh,
in.
so
She's-
how did I miss
she's
that
in
news flash?
She's in like-
Like, well, here we have our first winner of the night,
There we
ladies and
go.
gentlemen. The first winner of the night, Teresa Mass,
It's
right here. You
contagious.
saw it
It's-
first.
It's contagious.
And
So-
I was sitting here trying to think. I was like, I know she had a race, but like,
I still voted for her.
I don't see
think-
it.
I
I don't
think
see
it's-
the
so
results.
did I.
I think
voted
it's
for
so-
it.
Thank you.
I think it's very similar to Ron Cutzinger's race. So
Okay.
because those I believe have already been called. Again, I don't want to misspeak, but
Well, we called it. We've called it.
So
You're the
it's-
winner.
it's official.
We're
So-
making you the winner. Well, congratulations!
Thank you
Like I
very
can't
much.
believe that I'm sitting here like what did I miss? And so thank you, John, for weighing in. You're a voice of wisdom as always, and or most of the time. Well,
we'll give him 90%.
90%. Hey, listen, 90%. Any guy, any husband will take 90%. I'll tell you that right now. Jennifer is over there laughing. If she was here, she'd probably be on your side and never give me 90%. She'd say no, 89, 88 at most. Yeah.
Teresa,
There we go.
I'm being now that you're elected again and you lost, what advice would you give for people entering into politics, like the new generation coming up? What advice? Because you did lose, like so did Bill Clinton.
Absolutely.
And then what Jamie always says, and I actually agree with this, even when you lose, you win.
Oh, I wholeheartedly would say to anybody who wants to get into it, first of all, my hat is off to anybody who's willing to do it, because it truly is a huge commitment. You do put your life on hold. You do put a lot of what I would call your day-to-day privacy, the ability to be very thick-skinned. I would encourage the young to become very involved in politics across the board. Learn as much as you can, be ferocious about it. Read, engage, ask questions. Jamie and I would speak frequently about just, I don't want to say nonsensical things, but processes, the ability to be able to say, be smart about how you represent yourself, because you need to be true to yourself. So don't try and make people happy, because not everybody's going to be happy.
Sure.
Be very genuine, be very transparent. Anybody who knows me knows that what you see is what you get. Take it or not.
I just
it.
met you, and I'm glad I voted for
And
you.
I
so.
am very appreciative of the opportunity to live in a predominantly red county, because I will tell you, even in red counties, there's a lot of work. We have a media that is very biased, and unfortunately, they don't always tell the truth. And so they skew stories very negatively. And you have to be willing to absorb those and not react.
Absolutely.
And you have to be willing to take your hits. And although you want to correct it, the best thing you can do is just not give them a platform at all. And so I would encourage people to be genuine, be very, very true to yourself, and you better be able to put it all on the line.
And how did you get involved? Did you go through the party? Did you get through the local Sarasota County party? Or how did you kind of dive into this entire political realm?
I have been very pleasured since I was 18 years old to be very involved in the Republican Party. Ronald Reagan was my first president I ever got to vote for. That was so cool. And I've always been very involved. I've served on committees. I've served as, vice chair of the REC. I've made wonderful friends along the way. And for me, it was about putting my team together first.
Okay.
So I put together what I called my dream team that fit my personality, and my campaign manager, my political consultants. And I took the opportunity to say, this is how I put a plan together.
Mhm.
And I started 2 years ago. And I said, this is how it's going to roll out. This is the amount of money I think I'm going to have to raise.
Mhm.
This is the process. I was always willing to listen to objective, reasonable conversations. Like, you know,
And you come from a background, a business background. I read up
Absolutely.
woman-run
Yep,
entrepreneur.
female
So
majority
I mean,
owned company,
yeah, exactly.
37 years. And I said, you have to be very tenacious
Mhm.
about it. You got to be smart. You got to be willing to say, okay, we're going to divert from the plan slightly here because this is what's in our best interest. And you have to be willing to say, whether it's 4 a.m. or 12 midnight, the hours have to be put
And
in.
was this a family decision or was this your decision? So was this something you woke up and talked to your family and was like, I'm doing this? Either you're on board or you're not on board, or was it more of like a family, like, hey, mom, wife, let's, as a group, how did that go down at the kitchen table?
Well, it actually started much more privately than that between John and I.
Okay.
And
John's your husband.
yes. And I'm very blessed to be able to say that his response immediately was, whatever it is that you want,
Great.
I'm here to support you. The discussion with our daughters was completely different because both of our daughters have always been very supportive, but they were like, Mom, are you sure this is what you want to do? Are you ready for this?
Because the school board, that's a little dicey.
Yeah.
I just moved here 4 years ago and I read up on the school board and
Yeah.
whoa, that
And
was,
the school board race, they went after my family.
Mhm.
And I reminded them that I'm running for office. They're not. And so I tried to draw very healthy boundaries, which the media was not respectful of. And so that was a really good lesson for me. And this time around, when I started to do my campaign, I made it very clear. I said, I'm running for office. And I continued to say the same thing over and over and over when they'd say, well, your husband this or your husband. I said, he's not running for office. If you have a question for me, I'll address it. If you don't, then we move on.
Mhm.
And I had to constantly remind them of where the line was at. And so I think when you are involved in politics, yes, you've made that choice. And so there is some transparency necessary. But I think it's also very important to draw that line and say, you cross this line and this interview's over.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really good to remind them of that because they'll try and constantly chip away at it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So are you glad you didn't win the school board?
Absolutely. It was a blessing in disguise.
I was going to say.
And there were many times when I said
Mhm.
that, I was like, okay,
Yep.
that was a blessing in disguise. But it has been very good to, like I said, I went through that process and it helped me to be prepared for this race.
Mhm.
It
Well,
really
I'm glad
did.
that you won because it's so important to have commissioners,
Yes.
competent commissioners. You'd be surprised when you have 5, you have 2 or 3 incompetent commissioners in other counties, and wow, how they can mess up a county.
And
So,
I think it's a very serious responsibility that people need to take it. And I've heard people say, well, it's not a real job. And I go, oh, it's a real job. It's 3 jobs. And I think it's very important that people understand that you really are putting literally everything on the line. You have to if you're going to do a good job.
because I also talk to business owners, small business owners, and they're like, Chad, listen, I would love to run, but I have a business. So what advice would you give to the entrepreneur that is sitting there and they're like, how do I have time to be into politics? I also have to put food on the table and I have to run my business. And this is where I think it's always, nobody could just get into politics if they have to go run a company. So how did you do it? And I applaud you for doing it. I mean, this is like,
It's a balance. My
yeah.
husband had to pick up a lot of slack
Mhm.
and he did it with grace. I did tell a lot of my clients that this is something that I'm going to do.
Mhm.
And they were extremely supportive. I've had a few that are like, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? But I really said to them, this is something that I am going to commit to 150%. I'm putting my business secondary.
Mhm.
So I think it's very, you said, what do people need to understand?
Yeah.
You either need to have a company that you can have a second in command
Mhm.
that can then pick up a lot of slack,
Sure.
or be able to be in a position that you are financially stable enough that you don't need to rely on that through your campaign because you need to be
Yeah.
so focused at all times.
I mean, and it goes back to, I look at even in Sarasota City and Sarasota, the pay for politicians, it's a full-time job. I'm always one to at least bump up their pay a little bit more. I mean, because you're giving up so much time, and unless you have a means to support yourself, you can't support yourself on a commissioner's salary, or you can't support yourself on a city council salary. I forget exactly what it is, but I want to say it's like $30,000-$40,000 as a city. I don't know what the commissioner's salary is, but I can't imagine it's enough to support a family. So if you're going to donate all your time and give back, I mean, these are things I think we need to talk about as a Sarasota County. So
It's nice that you say that, because I'm not sure if the majority of our constituents would agree with you on that, because I don't think they understand what it takes to be an elected official.
Mhm.
And so I think the education and the process of being able to explain this really is a full-time job. And it's actually more than that, because you don't just serve as the Board of County Commissioner, you serve on multiple other boards. You serve, and those are all like requirements of the job. They literally divvy out who's going to be on which committee, which
Absolutely.
council, and you serve on anywhere from 10 to 20 plus what you're doing.
Sure.
And so I don't think that the average citizen really has a grasp of the reality of the time commitment and the ability to be able to be a representative of almost 500,000 people.
And also when you step outside, you go to Publix, or you go to Winn-Dixie, or you just go to anywhere you go, hey, Commissioner, can I talk to you for a second? Okay. You're always on the clock. So it's not like, and I always compare, politicians to teachers. And I always think teachers should get paid more too, because your brain is always working. You're always doing your lesson plan. As politicians, you're always working. And if you don't get paid enough, then corruption can come in, or somebody can buy a politician and they have to answer to that person. So give a living wage to a politician, give a living wage to a teacher. I think they're on the same path, because you're always working. You're never stopping. I mean, when you step outside, you're always going to be commissioner, and you're always on the spotlight.
I think that the best commissioners and or elected officials are the ones that understand it really is a civic commitment.
Absolutely.
And I think that the majority of ones that are really good at what they do have that in their heart, and they understand it. And so the commitment that they make, that is part of it. And so they say, no matter what the pay is, I'm doing it for the right reasons. I'm doing it because I do believe in my county. I do believe in a conservative value. I do want this to be better for my kids and my grandkids.
Absolutely.
And so that is a big part of it. And I think that's why they put up with so much of the rhetoric.
Yes. And if you look at, we're
good.
Okay.
Unless somebody's in the Zoom. Nope.
Nope.
Okay.
But this is what makes Sarasota so great, is like, you're a highly educated woman. You're come from great family.
Thank you for identifying me as a woman, because I actually am a woman. I appreciate
so-
it. Thank you so much.
I didn't really
And
have
I know I'm
any-
a woman,
so-
and I'm very proud of it.
highly educated. And this is what makes Sarasota a premier county in
Yes, it
Florida,
does.
if not the country. I mean, our elections are great. I have to give a shout out. I don't know his name off the top of my head, but our county election commissioner,
Ron
Ron
Turner. I met the
He's
guy once or
amazing.
twice. I hope he never leaves.
He is top of his class.
I mean, I hope
really,
the guy never leaves.
Well, the statewide supervisor of elections association elected them their president. If that tells you anything about the caliber of Ron, and
he's very experienced.
Just-
He carries
and
himself
he-
so
We should
so
be the
well.
model.
Here's the thing,
model
like
for the rest of the country.
I've talked to him numerous times about things like election fraud and concerns I've had through my 30 years in politics, and he will take the time to tell you, okay, yes, these were some things that have happened in the past, but in Sarasota, in particular, Florida first, and then in Sarasota, he's even tougher than the laws of Florida. And Florida
He
have
is.
the best election laws. I tell people all the time, we have some of the greatest access. You can see the amendments to the Constitution that are here. It's easy to get on the ballot as a candidate.
It is.
It's easy to get a ballot initiative to change the Constitution on our ballot relatively easy. New Hampshire, they don't even allow it. You don't have a citizen method to get something in their Constitution. It's only through the legislature. And and then we have the most access to actually voting. We have our ballot accessible, especially in Miami-Dade County, in more languages than anywhere in the world. Anywhere in the world, you can have ballot access in Miami-Dade County, regardless of your language. And, you look at early voting, mail-in voting, election day voting, all of those things equal a the ability for people to vote in a free, fair, and transparent way. So Ron Turner, kudos to him. His results are always some of the first up, and that's why I always like to kind of have Sarasota as a barometer of where we are and what we're doing. So I think that may be where I have. Nope, I have Clay County up right this second. So
I will say the
There we
other
are.
thing about
There.
Sarasota County is that the number of days that we have for early voting is, although it's quite arduous,
Mhm.
having been out in the heat when it's
Yeah.
like, you know, primaries and you're praying for shade. But Ron really does a phenomenal job, and so do all the poll workers and the volunteers and the numerous amount of individuals that give of their time so that we have such what I would call progressive voting privileges, as far as like the ability to access them. It's a very pleasant environment. For the most part, they're extremely civilized.
Oh, totally.
I mean, it's just it really is quite an experience to be a part of
Almost,
and to see it.
Collegial. Like the blue team was on one side and the red team was on the other side, and they were like giving each other lemonade, and they all had their pamphlets, and it was
Yeah,
just
right.
very nice. It was very civil. And I was very proud.
You know, so we're looking at some election results, and so these are past results here, and I'm just going to go by memory of what I just saw because the results aren't in, but I like to look at counties like Clay, which is a suburb of Jacksonville. I looked at Duval. Those results aren't up yet. Sarasota, and it looks much more like a 2016 or better trend for Donald Trump than 2020. Even in Sarasota, we had, it looks like a 23,000 vote win in 2020, where we had about a 34,000 vote win in 2016. And those results in Georgia that you're looking at, we'll get to in just a second. And then same thing in Clay County. We're looking much more towards, we've already have a 30,000 vote margin.
Yeah.
And that's with early and mail-in ballots and not election day voting. So I guess the proof will be in the pudding, so to speak, to see, you know, Democrats are claiming, oh, Republicans cannibalize their election day vote. And I don't think that's what happened when we saw the number of elections vote, especially at the 9 a.m. report, where more than 500,000 Republicans have voted in Florida and 230,000 Democrats by 9 a.m. this morning. And so, you know, so I think you're seeing this is going to grow in these counties and be a better result than we saw in 2000.
And I know that as of like 5 o'clock, I had gotten a report, and they were saying that across the board in Sarasota County, and I won't break it down by Republican, Democrat, NPA, other, whatever, we literally had like 82% of all voters had voted, and that's incredible. And I'm telling you that speaks volumes, I think, for the culture, not only of our country and the temperature of what's going on and how valuable this election is, but it also has a lot to do with the work that Republican Party did to get the vote out
in the last 25 years.
Literally, it's been one of those things where it's like it's okay to trust the vote by mail. And that took a huge hurdle to get Republicans past that, because for years they're like, no, I want to be there on the day to put that ballot in and watch it. And so this was huge for us in Sarasota County.
Yeah, and Chad, I saw you kind of sneaking a peek at the Georgia results there on, we're cheating a little bit here, ladies and gentlemen. We've got a couple of TV stations up. We've got some computers going.
Like the red zone,
and you can kind of see that
I
kind of nerded out a little bit while Chad and Teresa were talking. So thank you for letting me nerd out for a second. But in Georgia right now, with about 500,000 votes in, 500,000. Now, that's probably about 10% of the votes we're going to see in Georgia, right? Yeah. We're going to see about maybe 5.3 million, 5.5 million. And what we're seeing right now is Donald Trump with a huge, huge, huge lead in Georgia. Jamie, with 500,000. He's got 130,000 vote lead out of 500,000 votes. So he's currently leading in Georgia by 23 points. Now, when you look at the map, there's a lot of red counties, right? Yes. Not a lot of blue. Not a lot of big blue counties.
Don't get excited.
So yeah, 130,000 vote lead is in those counties. is not insurmountable for Harris. However, I think we're seeing a bigger win. So we have our Zoom guest. So Teresa, do you mind sitting in with us? Or you?
I tell
Jennifer,
you what,
okay?
I thank you for the time. I've
Okay.
got my next stop to get to. It's been a pleasure. I appreciate you having me on.
Oh, well,
Jamie,
thank you
as
so much
always,
for
it's
coming.
a delight, not only as your friend, but as a fellow Republican, to enjoy some time
I
with
can't
you.
wait
And
to see the work you do as a county
I'm
commissioner.
super excited to see what the future holds for all of us.
Well, thank you so much.
Especially for our president. So I'm super excited.
So thank you, and
you for
have a
having
great
me.
rest of the night. Enjoy the party. We have a special guest tonight, a good friend of mine and a longtime colleague. Thank you, Teresa. And we are Morgan Ortegas from SiriusXM. You all know her. She's a former. She had the best job title, I think, in American politics, and it is spokesperson for the United States of America under Secretary Pompeo. You know, I'm going to introduce you like that every single time, Morgan, as the former spokesperson for the United States of America. I would have that so much bigger than my name. I would wear it like a billboard. And it's your daughter's birthday today. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Well, I apologize if it's really loud. I am coming to you guys live from Kid Rock's Bar in Nashville, Tennessee on Broadway. I will be Fox Nation. We're doing a big special here tonight. So we go on air in about 15 minutes on the Fox Nation app. And, you know, doing it at Kid Rock's Bar is a fun and interesting choice. So I thought either way, we all might leave here hungover, one way or the other. Hopefully we're celebrating. I was just listening to the Georgia returns that you were talking about, Jamie, and that's pretty phenomenal. I was with the former President Donald Trump yesterday in Pennsylvania. I was with Eric and Lara. We were doing Women for Trump, and I got to tell you, it was bittersweet. I didn't expect it to be this way, but I will say that everybody was tearing up on the campaign, just realizing that these were the final moments that Donald Trump will be running for president again. And I really feel like the team thinks that they've laid it all out on the field. But one of the, I think, the most interesting things, and I've been involved in this in Pennsylvania, is what we've done and what you were talking about in getting low propensity voters to vote early. That has been a massive focus on outside groups of the RNC, of the campaign. And it's still too early to tell, but we pray and hope that is what makes the difference, especially when you look at all of these swing states, and they're just talking about a few percentage points, thousands of votes, 40,000 votes, right? That can make the difference. The Trump campaign is banking on that effort to get out low and mid propensity voters around the nation to be the deciding factor tonight.
Well, and that's what we're looking at as well. I mean, I know that, and you and the campaign and everybody knows that Florida's been off the table for some time, but we're starting to see some results. We report really quickly in Florida because our early and mail-in ballots are counted prior to the polls closing, and so those are released immediately. So we have about 60% of our votes already counted and tabulated in some Florida counties. And I'll tell you, the results are looking better, especially if tradition holds true. And what we saw today is more Republicans voted on election day in Florida than Democrats. So I only think the numbers we see here in Florida are going to grow. He's at about, I want to say, an 8-point lead. I haven't seen the exact results lately as they update. But I know here in Sarasota County, he is trending towards a huge lead. And there's some places we want to like to look at, like Duval, that hasn't reported yet up in Jacksonville. But I know that you're saying the Kid Rock Bar, but you had a pretty good event at the national convention that was held in a pretty cool bar as well there in Milwaukee. How did that event go?
That was great. I mean, I feel like, there's been so many ups and downs on this campaign. It was just a week before our event at the convention, whenever Donald Trump was literally shot in the face. Thankfully, thank God, the angels were around him and protected him. I would say the mood was very celebratory at the RNC. And then, you went into Biden quitting, Harris coming in. They were feeling the vibes. Everybody, we felt a lot of momentum swing her way. I've definitely felt in the past 2 to 3 weeks that the momentum go back to where we were during the RNC. And I've been, just like you, Jamie, I worked my very first election cycle, 2004 and then 2006 with you in Florida. So we've known each other for a long time. And, you have a pretty good sense of where you are going into these things on election night. Anything crazy can happen. Hillary Clinton was not expecting to lose in 2016. However, I would say that when you start to just take the mood of the campaigns, it definitely, this past 3 weeks, felt like where we were in the convention, which was very celebratory. And by the way, here's just a microcosm example. I was going by to get my hair done today, of course, as ladies do, and getting my highlights touched up. Well, my friend owns her hair salon here in Nashville. She is a small business owner, and she's not overly political, but she said to me, Morgan, it's just really hard to run a business in this economy. I feel like my clients don't have the money that they once had to get some of, the more expensive things done to their hair, so her business is struggling. It's hard. And she said, I'm voting for Trump because as a small business owner, I just need a better economy. She just wants her salon to make it, right? She's not asking for a lot. She wants to be able to afford her groceries and to be able to have a successful and thriving small business. And to me, that is a microcosm, a small example of what women around the country are actually voting for.
No, absolutely. And you remember Jennifer Bash, my wife, and she came to
Of
Milwaukee.
course.
Yeah. So Jennifer, you have a question.
I do. And Morgan, I think that this is something that kind of people have lost during this whole election is, the sensitive side of Trump that nobody ever sees. And, one of the stories that I tell, and I hope you don't mind me telling this, is when you came to speak at Jamie's
Sure.
Republican Club, you talked about how he called you when your dog passed away.
Yeah.
If you
I don't mind you telling that story. Sorry, can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. No, I don't mind you tell that story at all. I mean, that's just an example of who he is. He cares about people. He didn't ask me anything else about my, about my job that I was doing for him at the time, what was going on around the world, none of that. It was 5 minutes just talking about my dog. He knew I was really sad and upset, and he wanted to show that he cared about who worked for him. And that's just an example of anybody who works for him knows this side of him. Everything that you hear in the media, about him is just, I think, for the most part, from people who don't know him.
Yeah, I think it's sad. Well, the media will never show that. And even, I don't know if you remember that his neighbor that spoke at the RNC who, called him the night that he got shot, after he got shot. And when Trump answered the phone, he said, I'm so sorry, I haven't called you in a while. How is your family? And he was like, I'm calling to see how you are because you were just shot. And, it just, people will never see that side of him. And it's really sad because I think that would make such a huge difference for him.
Yeah, I agree. I think, like I said, the more, Melania Trump had it right after Trump had the assassination, the first assassination attempt. If you remember in that statement that she wrote, she talked about how people had dehumanized her husband, in their politics. And that was, I think, so incredibly powerful. If we go back and look at her statement, she's saying, wait a minute, guys, this is not just somebody who's a politician who's running for the presidency. This is my husband. This is the father of my son. And you dehumanized him to the point where these leftists were so radicalized that they were trying to take him out. And I think that the rhetoric coming out of the Democratic Party has been incredibly dangerous. And I have full confidence that the American people are going to push back on that tonight.
Well, and I think you're exactly right. And I think, there's a couple of things that I've noticed here in Florida when I'm looking at these counties, rural voters that kind of maybe in 2020 decided to go towards Biden a little bit. And, of course, Donald Trump won those counties, but he won them by a smaller margin. He is winning them by a much larger, he won them by a larger margin in 2016. And we're seeing that larger margin return in rural voters. We're also seeing.
You're seeing that, Jamie, you're seeing that in Florida?
Yes. We sure are. you know,
That's great.
You look at sort of like Clay County outside of Jacksonville, which isn't necessarily a rural county, but it's we're seeing those kind of results here in Sarasota. We're seeing them. Little county like Hardy, you know, we're seeing those rural votes kind of come back home. And so, you know, I had predicted, you know, I wrote a blog that Trump would win. I tried every single way I could to try to, you know, make it as fair as possible for Harris. And the best I could come up with for her was about a 6.5 point win in Florida. I think we're going to trend more towards an 8 or 9 point win. Chad's a little bit more ambitious at plus 10, but I think we're on our way, and I think, you know, my hope is that we see that's indicative of everything around the country, that rural voters return home, the urban voters have realized the flaw of the Biden-Harris regime, and, you know, we start seeing, and I hope that there maybe was some response bias in with women in polling, that they just didn't feel comfortable saying they were voting for Trump when in fact they were.
You know, and you're the expert on Florida, Jamie. I'm looking at Carlos Jimenez's tweet when he's saying that Trump has just won Miami-Dade. I mean, that is, when I think about 20 years ago, when I first entered politics with you, that would have been almost incomprehensible to us. I mean,
Yeah.
Florida has just changed so much.
Yeah, and, you know, and part of that's the leadership of Ron DeSantis, and we've, you know, if you take Miami-Dade, Palm Beach, and Broward County together, you're talking about a place that's as an area of the country that's more democratic and more diverse and the same size as the state of Maryland. And, you know, Ron DeSantis won those 3 counties in 2022. And, you know, I'm not going to go as far to say in a presidential year that Trump replicates that. But if he's won Miami-Dade, we had chairman of the Republican Party of Florida, Evan Power, on earlier. He thinks there's a possibility that we win Palm Beach as well. We're certainly not going to win Broward, but you start to see a scenario where if and I'm not looking at the results right now, and when I looked at Broward, they were too early for me to speculate, but you know, if we start seeing a Broward at, you know, a loss of 150,000 or less, I think that's really indicative of what we will see throughout the
Jamie,
country in our urban areas.
I'm sorry to run, but I'm getting caught on air, so I got to go get mic'd up. But so great to be with you, my friend, and you know,
you're a dear friend, and thank you so much, Morgan.
Thank you.
All right, have a great night.
Thank you, Morgan.
Wow, what a powerhouse.
Absolutely.
That's some real insights. Well, I was wrong. She's on stage at Kid Rock's bar in Nashville, Tennessee. So, you know, we kind of let the cat out of the bag. We're not just coming up with these numbers magically in our head, Chad. We're actually looking at screens.
So,
and we have about 16 states closing at the top of the hour.
So we're trying to get Joe on the line.
So what I was doing was we're looking at, I was looking at Georgia, but let's take a look at.
I just want to make one comment here. Cambria County. Are you familiar with Cambria County, Jen, in Western Pennsylvania?
Vaguely.
90% red, and there seems like there's a little chaos happening there. I don't have all the data, but it seems like there's something going out there handing out paper ballots, or it seems like in our deep red county, which is a little bit of a head scratcher. So
they're giving everybody a second chance.
I don't know. There's something coming over.
For the votes they stole.
Something's coming over the news wire.
So we have a question from Jonathan Hogue. He said, I recently heard it said that Duval County is a bellwether for the state of Georgia. Do you think this is true? And how is Trump looking in Duval?
So let's go over to Duval and see if we can get it. This is one I had some trouble with, babe. I don't know if you want to help me out here or not.
I can definitely try.
So I was here at our link. I'm on I'm in the cell, but it doesn't click. So thank you, Jonathan, for the question. I will say that I just came back from the results over in Georgia. We're looking at about almost 1.5 million voters there now, having voted and Trump up 20 points. And so Georgia is, you know, trending in a great direction. It's still way too early to tell.
But normally,
Duval County and number one, I don't know that Duval has been trending to a blue county for a very long time, and we're looking at almost a tie in Duval with about 400,000 votes. If you go back to the Excel, let's look and see how many votes
And
there were
for
in 16 and 20.
People who are not familiar with Duval, Duval is outside Metro Jacksonville.
Yeah, so in 2016, there were about 417,000 total votes there. And in 2020, there were probably about right at 500,000 votes. So there's probably about another 100,000 votes to go that are election day votes. And they're virtually tied. So I think that's a good sign, because I don't think Duval is necessarily a bellwether county. I think that Duval has been trending blue. I expected to lose Duval tonight. And if Trump is tied, I don't think that that's necessarily an indicator of bad things to come. If you go next door to Clay, and
Oops, sorry.
I did have that up, but that's pretty easy. We're looking at what is that? Almost a 50,000 vote. So go back to so we're looking at almost 50,000 vote win in Clay County. It looks like they're completely done voted, recording there. Go back to the Excel to green, and Clay County, that would replicate 2020 and actually do better than 2016. So as you know, Trump won Florida in 2016 by a point. He won by more than 3 points in 2020. So it's certainly trending more towards the bigger win here in Florida than the smaller win he had. So I see nothing there that makes me think that those are outside the let's say it put it in the area of concern. Chad, is that fair enough to say?
Mm-hmm.
My expectation is we'll probably see a call on Florida very quickly after 8 p.m.
So
Well,
we
we
have
have 1 minute,
sorry.
so we can almost do the countdown.
Yeah.
So
Joe is not able to join. He is at a table currently. He said
That's
he'll
fine.
try to get in later. I do have a question from Amber. She would like more information on the IVF and reproductive views that Trump has. Because all the women and everybody is voting for Kamala based on that, because of, they're saying that he's going to take IVF treatment away and everything like
Right.
that. So just what kind of information do you have that people aren't actually hearing about?
So, Trump has said that he's not going to pass any type of national abortion ban and that he supports IVF treatments. Certainly, our U.S. Senator Rick Scott has said, in commercial after commercial, that he supports IVF treatments. And, Trump's position on abortion has been to return it to the states, not to the so I think Chad has something he wants to say. So it's 8:00. We've closed the polls here in Florida today. And, I think we've seen enough data to know that we're going to win Florida. And we beat CNN by 30 seconds there. And I'm going to say we called it even earlier. But let's put that in perspective here. Here it is, 8:01. And there's enough data in that Florida's off the table,
which has never happened.
That's just absurd.
Unheard of.
But what has happened is we know that because early and mail-in votes are about 60 to 70%, that those votes were counted prior to the polls closing, and they were released upon the polls closing. And so there's enough data to call Florida at this point. So Florida's
Who just called it?
Yeah, they just called it.
Yeah. So Florida is
So
strong.
we were before everybody.
There we go.
Woo.
Well, they were 1. We called it 8, so we beat the
There we
national
go.
vote by 1 minute. We'll see if we can go on the next one.
It is nice having the chairman give us inside information a little bit, knowing that I think we're going to be up by 10%. So,
All right, not to take away from that, but I want to make sure that Amber's question was answered.
So I thought I answered it.
Okay, I'm just making sure.
So our we don't have another guest until 8:25. And so what we thought we would do is kind of look at these. Chad, I think you had some congressional seats that you wanted to have people?
Well, I think if we have time, I mean, Georgia's going to come in with some data. So there's a couple of counties that we really want to focus on, at least in Georgia. I think one interesting one is Columbia County, which is just outside of Augusta, if we can get the map over there. But if you look at Columbia, I mean, Trump won. If Biden shrunk. So in 2016, Columbia was all for Trump. Then Biden ate into the margin. So I'm very interested to see how Columbia County outside of Augusta does. You have Evans, you have Augusta. So that would be an interesting, if anybody's out home and wants to look at that. That is one county that is on the radar.
And you said Georgia.
In Georgia. Just north in Augusta.
See
But
if we can get it up
yeah,
on here.
let's see if there's
I
any.
do have it.
Okay.
Oh, you do? Oh, there you go. Okay.
Mhm.
There's not anything.
Not anything. Okay, that's just something to keep out there. The county to the left of it, if you go there. Yeah. If we have, what I did notice though on the screen, I did see data coming in from Virginia, which I didn't really love. I know Evan talked a little bit about Virginia. The early data out of Virginia doesn't look so good right now for the Republicans. I was expecting a little bit of a better showing, but it's still early. We do have New Hampshire, which early data coming in with New Hampshire. It's again not the best news so far, but there's still early. It seems like Harris is up by about 10,000 votes with a small lead, percentage wise. And then the other counties that we want to look at in Georgia is that we have Gwinnett, Georgia on my mind. So if you're at Hall, so Hall is one of these mostly heavily Republican metro Atlanta counties. Trump won by a huge margin in 2020, but he won them by less than he did in 2016. So if you look at Hall, that's another county where if you want to see how Georgia's going, I'm pretty confident that the Republicans, so far the early data looks beaming actually, but you have to pay attention to Gwinnett, Hall. Clayton is just outside of Atlanta, where, and this is interesting too, is it'd be a good test for Harris's ability to turn out the black voter in Clayton. Right now it's about 73%, and Clayton is just south of Atlanta near the airport. So if there's any data coming in from Clayton, that'd be interesting to see. But there's a ton of data coming in as we get. And is there any more data coming in? See, I'm staring at my hedge bet.
I think we can turn off
Yeah.
the Florida.
Yeah.
Yep.
Where
Anything
that
that's in
one.
Florida.
Okay.
And then let's go back over
just
and let's see
trying to
if
get rid of
we've
this
got
stuff.
anything from North Carolina. They're talking about Mecklenburg County up there, which is a big deal for Democrats.
So one interesting thing, Jamie, is I voted in about 5 different states. I voted in Virginia, I voted in North Carolina, I voted in Arizona, Florida, New York. So I got a handful of swing states underneath my pocket. So
Here's what we got going on here
yeah.
in Mecklenburg.
So Mecklenburg, if you're not familiar, Mecklenburg is Charlotte. And then you have a couple of counties outside of Charlotte that are also kind of bellwether out there.
So yeah, we've got so there's some early results coming in. Harris winning big in Mecklenburg with about 33,000 votes in. If you go back to the green tablet, so in North Carolina and Mecklenburg. So we're looking, yeah, that's a place where we're going to see about 750,000 votes. So that's a scratch of the surface. So there we are with, I see what you're looking at in Virginia,
Yeah.
but I also saw that in North Carolina, they showed, they have almost 2 million now reporting in Georgia, and Trump up by 250,000 votes. So that's trending in the right direction. Let's see.
And Georgia was leaning red but it just depends how much it was leaning.
It's also important to know that, like in Georgia, there was no U.S. Senate race to drive money and turnout and enthusiasm. In North Carolina, there's no U.S. Senate race, but there was a governor's race, and the Republican governor is not going to bode well tonight. And so we'll have to see if that North Carolina gubernatorial race is indicative of, kind of is the anchor there. I think what we're probably, one of the things, this is kind of like the show Entourage, where it's like, oh, there's maybe not bad results, but a slow reporting process because of what's going on in Western North Carolina, and how initial results were that turnout in those Western North Carolina counties was extremely high, where Trump defeated Biden in 2020. But they may be having some issues with counting votes out there.
Well,
I haven't really seen the
I
map
would
yet.
say that because of Helene and the storms that they have in the last, let's say, month, maybe they're just so pissed off with the FEMA and Biden's administration and Harris that they're saying, you know what, we're getting the hell or high water, we're voting. So
Yeah.
let's see what happens with the voter turnout on the western part. I mean, you have Lenore, you have Catawba, you have Montgomery, Washington, you have Scotland, all these counties in middle and western, Ashland out there. So that's going to be interesting to see what happens there. But I don't expect data to come in there yet.
Yeah, early election data, when Florida comes in, it includes the mail-in ballots and the early voting ballots. In these other states, it often it's going to be the early vote, which tends, in a lot of states, tends to go more Democratic. So
just
we'll
watching
see
the
how it-
screen there, I'm slightly optimistic that Trump is eating into the Virginia lead. He was down by about 9 as the votes coming in. He's down by about 7. So that is somewhat encouraging. If he can hold, he's going to lose Virginia, but if he can come close to getting about 5 points close to Virginia, I think it's definitely an encouraging night for the Republican Party.
So can I ask a question? So, and for these are for people that don't know, like me. So when it comes to, someone doesn't win by popularity vote, right? So they win by the electoral electoral vote.
Yeah.
So they're right there. We're watching CNN right now, and it's saying that that Trump is winning
90 votes to 27.
Right. So what does that mean in the grand scheme of things?
So
Is there, so per state, is that per state?
Yeah, so those are the states that they've already called one way or the other, that there's, irrefutable data that that's where they're headed, right? And so it becomes a high mathematical improbability that somebody would flip, if they were to flip Florida, for instance,
Mhm.
right? And so so now the question is, there's a group who are wanting to go to the popular vote and turn their back on the electoral college, and that's a horrible idea for a lot of reasons, but the number one reason is the way that our founding fathers set it up was the U.S. House was representative of the people, and the U.S. Senate was representative of the states. Our founding fathers were very adamant that our federal government recognized both people and states. And about 100 years ago, we passed 17th Amendment, whatever, like, if I've not really studied, but we went to direct election of U.S. senators. There was a slew of amendments, 4 or 5 constitutional amendments that happened in the early 20th century. And they were, one was, we went to direct citizen election of U.S. senators. Prior to that, senators were elected in from their legislature. So you always elected a legislator to the U.S. Senate. It was, if you made it to the legislature, then if you wanted to be in the U.S. Senate, you were elected from another legislative body. But what that required then was that the person in the U.S. Senate was supportive of the state, right? Because they were elected from the state legislature. And now we have citizen elections of U.S. senators. I'm not sure it's a positive thing, but it's certainly not what the founding fathers intended. I don't know that it's positive or negative. I think we end up with, the split government. But what has happened because of this last 100 years is that the body politic or American psyche no longer really realizes the importance of states' rights. And so, and that's part of what we're seeing in the abortion, discussion. There's never been a federal right to abortion. There was a U.S. Supreme Court that overturned a law in Dallas, Texas, that restricted abortion, right? And so then it became like, okay, so Democrats or pro-choice folks had 50 years to pass a federal law in making abortion federal law, but they never had the political will or votes to do it. So they always relied on the U.S. Supreme Court. And a lot of people view that Roe decision as a decision of women's rights, but it was truly a decision of states' rights. And the Dodd decision that overturned Roe was the U.S. Supreme Court reversing that wrong, that lack of recognition of states' rights. And so they decided that when it comes to abortion, that is a right that's specific to states, not to the federal government, until the federal government passes a law. And so it cannot be done, as Kamala Harris says, with an executive order. It would need to be done legislatively through the U.S. House and U.S. Senate.
Yeah. And I would go even a step further. I mean, you look at the Bill of Rights and you look at what our rights are as Americans, right to free speech, right to bear arms. When you look at human rights, and this is where I think it doesn't quite, when a man wanted to marry a man and a woman wanted to marry a woman, the word marriage was brought up. And when I look at my, upbringing as a Catholic, not as, but also as an American, I said, you know what? That's a human right. That is a human right. And for a political reason, that needs to be a federal law. The states cannot sit there. That has to be a federal law. If you want to be married, then you're going to be married. As an American man, woman, you're going to be married. And I look at marriage as a basic human right. What's not a basic human right is abortion. So when it's not a basic human right, it gets thrown back down to the states. And then the communities and the states then get to vote on what they want to do with abortion. But it's not a federal, it's not a human right. And that's what I think a lot of people don't understand about being an American. And then I'll kick it back to electoral college. We are not one country. And I explain this because I have the liquor business, and I explain this anytime that people want to import or do business, you're not dealing with one country. You're dealing with 50 countries with 50 different laws. And that's why we're the United States of America. And if we didn't have the electoral college, then we would just have New York and California dominating the entire country. And 90% of all landowners would be out of luck. So if we didn't preserve the electoral college, then you're going to just fast forward to another civil war, because the entire middle of the country would be disenfranchised by the entire coastal regions and where the whole population centers are. Another interesting thing too is we haven't really talked about this, and why we have a minute is you look at illegal immigration. And if you look at illegal immigration, not only is it wrong and does it mess us up, it messes us up because if you look at who's getting electoral college vote, California, New York, wherever the illegal immigrants are going, we as a census are actually looking them as part of our populace. And because they're part of the populace, that's part of the census, which means the more people you have in your state, according to the census, gets an extra vote. So even though they can't vote, they are kind of voting. And that's something that, again, needs to be corrected ASAP.
Well,
Aren't they voting anyway, just with state IDs, right? Isn't that what's happening? That they're in these states and voting.
Right. They'll get a state ID, a state driver's license. And in Florida, we've kind of stopped some of that. Chad and I are going to argue probably one point from both ends to the middle. I don't see marriage as a human right. What I do see marriage as is government intervention, and government's responsibility when it comes to marriage is basically the intervention comes when people decide to get divorced, and they can't come to an agreement when it comes to divorce, when it comes to either separating assets or raising children. And so that's government's responsibility when it comes to marriage. I love the fact that you said that there's, human rights. I think human rights include not being enslaved, not to be trafficked across borders, not to be sold into slavery
Sure.
or sex trafficking. Those are human rights. And marriage, I don't think reaches that level. People try to say everything is this right. You have a right to education. Well, no, we as a
Why
people
wouldn't it
decide
reach
to
that
do
level?
What's that?
Why wouldn't it reach that level?
What, marriage?
Yeah.
Because I don't think that it's something that it's inherent into, because I think if you're saying it's a human right, it's saying that you should be married, right? And I think that takes it a step too far.
I don't think.
But
I think marriage, but I mean, again,
I think
going back,
I think we're
yeah.
agreeing in principle that the government should be not involved in determining who gets married. Government should be involved in, regardless of what we call it, government should be involved when people can't agree in a divorce.
But then if it's a license, why can't it just be like my driver's license and it expires?
And you have to renew it.
No, I mean, marriage is the only contract that once you sign it, it's forever. It's the only license. I mean, it's just like, I got to renew my driver's, my hunting, my fishing. I got to renew all these license. Marriage, nah. Why don't we just make a 5 or 10 year? I mean, these are things
that's actually not a horrible idea.
that's original thought.
No, I mean, really. And don't get scared or anything, but no, it's, I mean,
She's getting the 4-year itch, ladies and gentlemen.
no, it just, I mean, if you think about that, because then you literally have to sit down and have that conversation. Okay.
We're renewing our license.
Our marriage is about to expire. And is this what we want to do?
And then just figure it out on your own.
Yeah,
I mean,
just
you got
figure it
the
out on your
kids,
own.
you just be like, okay. But I think that's a topic for maybe reasonable arguments down the line.
Yeah.
So, and what data do we have coming in right now?
I am just looking at some, so not enough there.
No.
I was looking Wake County, North Carolina. Let's look. Let's see here.
What's Pennsylvania doing? They have anything showing yet?
Well, it's my least favorite state when it comes to elections.
Help me find the election where it says election results. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not very good websites.
Sometimes they do not do great on.
So some of the counties that we have to pay attention, if you're at home, you want to look at Wake, which is near Raleigh, Mecklenburg, which is in Charlotte. You have Union just outside of Charlotte. You have Robinson, which is very, very, very Trump without college degrees. So it's heavily white without college degrees. You have Henderson, where is also another one. But this is on the western part of the state that's been affected by Helene. And we call them boomerang states, which are states that have went for Trump in 2016, and then they went for Biden in 2020. So some of the counties that you want to look for are Nash and New Hanover.
I'm looking at. I'm just trying to look at what the some of the results are in. We're seeing North Carolina trending. It looks like it's trending towards Harris, right? And so I want to make sure that I'm looking at Cabarrus County, Cabarrus. Excuse me if you're from there and I'm mispronouncing it. But this is a Republican county, right? And so, you're seeing a 1,200 vote lead with by Harris. So all they have in here are early votes. Or it would be my speculation. And you're looking at a county that has 120,000 total votes, and 6,000 are in. So there's a long way to go in these counties and in North Carolina. So. We'll come back to that in a little bit, but what I would like to do is kind of go over to Michigan that closed at 8 p.m. We're probably a few minutes from our other folks joining in. Let's see if we have a couple of these counties that want to.
Do we have Michigan or Wisconsin?
They are in?
They're both in.
This is Roy and Mike.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Why not? Why don't we bring them in? So I'll tell you, this is one of my podcasts. These are my new podcast buddies, Roy and Mike. They are from, it's the podcast is called The View from Here. And I think we initially scheduled for, I don't know, 45 minutes. I don't know, Roy, how long was that podcast supposed to be? And we ended up sitting there talking for about two or 2.5 hours. I really enjoyed the show with you guys. And I think we're trying to get you on video now. I kind of heard you come in via I kind of heard your sound. Are you there, Roy?
Yes. Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Hey, Roy. Hey, Mike. The View from Here, guys.
Hello.
There they are.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear and see you. Hey, Mike even has a tie. And what's your tie, Mike?
It's Tigger.
Tigger. Is that a Christmas?
Because it reminds me of Trump.
Is that a Christmas?
It's orange and it never runs out of energy. And
Yeah.
I couldn't wear the buckwheat tie because it's been done.
So where are you guys located?
East Coast, I can tell.
Yeah. New Jersey.
I'm in Pennsylvania. I'm in the Lehigh Valley.
Behind enemy lines in New Jersey.
So what are you seeing there in Lehigh Valley? Is how I mean, I'm sure you've looked at election results. Are you seeing any surprises? What's your take on what's going on the ground
Too
there?
early. It's too early.
Yeah.
But from a personal point of view, I wear a MAGA hat all over the place. I have so for the last 4 years, and I've talked to, I've interacted with thousands of people, and many of them I've had long conversations, and it's becoming very intense here. And there is a very pro-Trump Vance group in this area.
Excellent. And New Jersey, I think we know is going to trend blue, Roy. But what are you seeing on the map here that either has you concerned or excited about the election returns tonight?
So many people have turned out for Trump, and I've seen so many people, or so many Trump signs all over. They dwarf the Harris Walsh sign. It's amazing because it is a very deep.
Oh. Might have lost them.
However,
I think you need to get a little closer to your phone, Roy. It's we're not picking up your audio.
no. Is that better?
It is
Yes,
better.
much better.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I had
That
it
is
sitting on
okay.
a thing there that covered up the speaker there. I apologize. Anyway, I think we're going to get a lot more Trump votes than they expect. If we run an honest election, I think Trump even has a chance of winning the state.
Wow.
Roy, this is Chad.
Yeah, I mean, there were so many people. Look at New York City, for example. 80 or 85,000 people showed up in Madison Square Garden. Only 20 got in, but the outside, the streets were packed with MAGA hats. My brother was there that night. I was supposed to be there with my girlfriend too. She had tickets. However, we couldn't go because it was her granddaughter's birthday that day. And here in New Jersey, I mean down south in what was it, Wildwood? I know people who went down there. They said there were probably between 80 and 100,000 people, even though the media tried to claim it was only 30.
Wow.
Right.
And that's what worries me about everything, by the way. Oh, by the way, Mike, you look like a cheap mafia hood. Mafia boss, I should say. A cheap mafia boss.
Not
Anyway,
in the Tigger tie.
Thank you for
Not in the
actually
Tigger tie.
insulting me. Thank you.
Oh,
What are friends for? Anyway,
And with
this is
friends
how
like
we are
these,
on the
right?
podcast, by the way.
I would insult Roy, except it's a target-rich environment.
Anyway, what you were saying before, I worry about what's going to happen after the election. I think Trump is going to win, but we already have, for example, there's a thing called 65 Project, which is some supposed watchdog group of attorneys that are going to go after attorneys who helped Trump, either in his civil and criminal trials, which are all shams, or if they help him contest the election if in case it's stolen. I worry about that. I worry about I've heard talk that the Democrats may be planning to institute martial law, which would mean there would be no transfer of power in January. I may be, worrying about nothing, but
Well, the problem is that the as far as I'm concerned, our opposition, whatever you want to call them, I can't say it on public, but anyway, the opposition has proven itself to be so caustic that I won't put anything past them. They've even said, by any means necessary, more than once. So these are people that have made true public statements that have been criminal. And so I don't know what they can or can't do, but I wouldn't put anything past them. So
from New
I
York,
think
sorry, go ahead.
I think primarily what's happened, and this is more important than even winning the election. I think the most important thing that's happening is the many of the American people that we admire, the patriot inside, okay, the patriot in one's heart, they are alive and they are walking the streets now. And regardless of what they respond to and what they do, they're not going to be silenced anymore. They're not going to be buried. They're not going to be overrun anymore, and they're not going to be ignored.
Yeah, like somebody said, for 30 years, 40 years now, they've been poking us in the chest with their finger, and we keep moving back.
Right.
There's going to be a point at where Americans are going to say, no, enough of this.
Well, I think that time has come.
And,
I think that time has come.
yeah. I'd
What's
like
that?
to respond to something that you did say about marriage. I think the main reason why gay marriage was allowed is because the nature of the law was embedded with the word marriage, and that these people wanted to have a more meaningful relationship than just being lovers. So because of the nature of the law, there was no room for them other than basically piggybacking on the previous laws. So I think that in truth, they're not truly married because it's a unfruitful relationship, but from a legal standpoint, they are.
Well, and I advocated for a long time, not necessarily for gay marriage, but for gay rights when it came to divorce and gay rights when it came to end of life care. I know many people, both my parents retired from hospice. They're very conservative, but my dad's a minister. My mom is a social worker, and they both saw firsthand how people in long-term relationships, 20, 30 years. And when folks bought a house, back, in the 1990s, but they bought a house in the 60s, only one person, they didn't give a mortgage to two people if you weren't married. And so the name is in one person. 30 years later, they have the house. They don't do the proper paperwork to have dual ownership of the house. A partner dies, and the family that maybe ostracized that gay son or gay brother or lesbian sister, they would swoop in and literally steal the house and kick the partner out of the house that they helped pay for 30 years. And I never could really kind of come to grips with how that could possibly be fair. And so I've always kind of just, advocated like, hey, listen, where's a reasonable spot where government should be intervening in these cases? And I told my gay friends at the time, going back to the 90s, like, quit. Can we take the word marriage out of it and include the word rights? And like Chad did, like, end of life rights. Like there's a certain level of, I just felt like credibility and respect Republicans lose when we don't listen to people and try to understand the plight that they're in.
Absolutely. And that's what we need to do better as a party. We need to listen to our constituents. We need to listen to people. And that's how we need to get more people into our party, by protecting them. That's, to your point, it's about protection, the government, and what we need to do as a party. I mean, sometimes you just got to look at it as those two guys or two women that were married, and then somebody comes, next to kin comes and takes their house away. They were paying the bills.
And kicked them out. Yeah, kicked them out. Like, paid for this house.
Or some estranged daughter.
Laws without spirit serve no one. Yeah. They just all they do is they arbitrarily dissect society instead of going ahead and promoting and nurturing society.
Well,
Plus, hey, the gays should have the right to marry also, because why should straight people be the only ones who are miserable?
I never stopped you.
Listen, I'll tell you, I talked to these guys, for 2 hours. I think it was 2 hours, wasn't it, guys?
Yeah,
And
it was just
Felt
about
like
2
2 hours.
it was so much fun. And you can see why. You should definitely check out their podcast, The View from Here. What else do you guys have to share with us what do you think happens in the next couple days? What's your prediction on when we find out the winner? Let's ask that one.
I think if Trump does win, there's going to be a lot of violence in the streets, especially in the blue cities.
Well, I hope you're wrong.
Well,
I don't know what's going to happen this time. I mean, the Biden administration is going to do nothing to stop it. I hope the local law enforcement finally grows balls and says, no, we're not going to listen to this, and we're going to stop it before any more property is destroyed, before any more people are hurt.
So do you think that if that were to happen, that it would then be considered another January 6th, or would the media and everybody else squash that because it's the Democrats that lost?
Well,
Well,
there
January
was no COVID pandemic, and there was no January 6th, except done by the opposition of liberty. That was a sham. That was a false flag. That was a way of basically demonizing the Republican MAGA movement and making it difficult for MAGA people to basically express themselves because of fear, based upon such an extreme injustice.
Yeah, intimidating us into not protesting. I mean, but under the Constitution, January 6th was completely legal and constitutional. It's when the people can go there and air their grievances and say, no, something's wrong before you certify this election. We want you to investigate it. And then they caused this chaos, which, the government caused the chaos, actually. And these people were arrested. And meanwhile, Congress slipped in the certification without any resistance.
Let's not forget the Summer of Love. That was certainly unacceptable.
Well, we've had I don't know. I know that Harris supposedly had the campaign of joy, and yet she called us all, or her surrogates called us Hitler, weak, stupid, go down the list of other things that we were called throughout the campaign. And then she finishes trying to say, hey, I'm a unifying voice. And I just thought her closing argument, and we'll see I think we'll see tonight. It's certainly Harris's closing argument over this last 72 hours was kind of the same as Biden's, like, oh, I'm going to unify the country, I'm going to be a president for everybody. I just think that it comes as from a more disingenuous place when it comes from her. Biden at least had 40 years of experience and friendships and proof that he tried to unify, or tried to at least work across the aisle when he was in the U.S. Senate. And Harris has absolutely no history of working with Republicans on anything and being anything but a divisive person. And it'll be interesting because these two campaigns have had such a different closing argument. Of course, Trump's closing argument is that I've done it, I was successful, and Harris is unqualified and not trustworthy. So we'll, two completely different closings to the campaign. We'll see which one works. But Roy and Mike and from
One last
New Jersey and Pennsylvania.
The main difference between the Republicans and the Democrats: the Republicans call this day Election Day. The Democrats call it Selection Day.
I didn't get that.
Selection Day.
Selection Day.
Oh, Selection Day. Selection Day. Okay.
Oh, and by the way, I have to disagree with you real quick. Kamala did unify the Trump voters and independents by calling us what she called us. And, I think she's going to bring out more votes this time than we've ever seen before. I'm hoping so anyway.
You know, and I think that's what we certainly have seen here in Florida. I know they called Florida as soon as the polls closed in the central time zone, you know, under our great leadership of Governor Ron DeSantis. And what we're seeing here in Florida, and I hope it carries out throughout the country, is urban voters were not excited about Harris and did not show up to vote, and rural voters showed up in droves and provided him a huge victory here in Florida. It looks like it's trending towards 8 or 9 points, which is unheard of in a presidential election. As you two guys know, I'm a veteran of the 2000 election, and 537 votes separated the two candidates by after 6 million were cast. But we do have our next guest. So I do appreciate you guys coming on, and thank you so much, Roy and Mike.
Thank you for inviting us.
No,
Thanks for
thank
having
you so
us,
much.
yeah.
I look forward to our next discussion. So thanks a lot.
All right.
thanks
Have
for
a
the
good
chat.
night.
All right, have a great
Go
night.
Trump. Bye.
All right, babe, you brought up some.
Get out of here.
You
We
brought
gotta
up a
leave the
map
studio,
here.
I guess. Here we go.
I guess so, yeah.
You brought up a map, and currently, out of the states that have been called here, I guess this is a Google map. Is that what we have here, babe? Or AP? The AP
yeah.
hasn't called the race. Okay, so I think this is Associated Press. No real surprises here. No real surprises on the map as of yet. North Carolina, they're showing as a light pink. Georgia, light pink. Texas, light pink. Pennsylvania, light blue. Michigan, light blue. I tried to go to a couple of websites in Michigan. I haven't been, we weren't successful in getting that county data yet. It didn't show any data whatsoever for Michigan.
Couple things. The governor of North Carolina is not going to be Robinson. Stein demolished him.
Yeah,
So
that was a foregone conclusion, I thought.
Right now, there's about 41% in, and it looks like 49.6 to 49.1. Dems are ahead right now. Georgia, you got 53% in. Republicans look strong right now with that figure. So not again, it's way too early to call, but I kind of like where this is going.
Yeah. So, and I'll just say, when we see these results, when you see the results on CNN or Fox News, where it says, 22% reporting, that's 22% of precincts. So it doesn't necessarily mean the 22% of voters. So that's why when we're looking at this data, we look at the number of votes cast in 2016 and 2020. And we try to compare the number of actual raw votes each candidate has, so we can kind of really tell, whether it's so to speak cooked. Does that make sense, Jennifer? Or you look like you have a question?
No, I think this just goes back to, the voting integrity, right? So when does that come into play? Is it, how
Pennsylvania.
yeah.
There it is. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Chad, did you have any other updates you wanted to go over right now? Because I think we're about to head to Texas, see how your favorite Senator Ted Cruz is faring down with Garrett. Garrett, I'm gonna butcher your last name. Fulce, Fulce.
I've been called a lot worse.
I know. I butchered it on your own podcast. So you have the right to be mad for me now getting it wrong twice. But from the Seeing Red podcast, Garrett, you and I had a great conversation a couple weeks ago, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. Baby, you want to move over to like the Texas map just so we can kind of look at see what's going on. Garrett, what's happening on the ground in Texas?
Texas is a blowout for Republicans, it looked like so far. Right now, we have early voting data come in. We're one of the states that can start counting early. We have a whole process called the early ballot boards in every county, and it's a whole process. But where you have the county GOP and the county Dems like overseeing the whole process, and there's different people being appointed to the board. Harris County is only going 6 points for the Democrats. That's terrible for Kamala. Fort Bend County, where I live, is a 2-point or 1.6 point early voting lead. We're expecting that to be about 85% of the early vote or of the total vote. there are a number of races where Republicans didn't think they'd have a chance, or where we were pretty worried about, like county sheriff, which is a county-wide race. The county sheriff candidate is up by 0.6 points after early voting in Fort Bend County. These are things I'm seeing now. What we're not seeing are a bunch of the rural counties. Texas has 254 counties, ranging from Loving County that has 120 registered voters to Harris County that has over 2 million, right? So you have a lot of variation in like what's coming in and how fast, and just whether or not the county, like if it's raining someplace, they might not have internet and can't upload to the Secretary of State. So we have a lot of stuff going on. Like if you look at Texas, you really have to look at the big cities and you have to look at the suburbs. And what's coming in right now are the big cities and the suburbs. And Ted Cruz still has a lead. And he's not even banking all the votes that are coming from the rural, where he's going to win by 50 points. I'm expecting Cruz to win by, my prediction was 7 points with a high of kind of 9. And it looks like I was right in that Trump is going to beat him by about 3 points of whatever his vote ends up being.
Yeah, that's kind of what we're seeing here in Florida as well. You know, a state that really Harris did not throw very much money at, but not very much staff. And Trump, I haven't seen the latest results because we've been trying to jump over across the map. We just talked to Pennsylvania and New Jersey, and you know, so we're but I think we're trending towards at least an 8-point win here in Florida. And also, it looks like Rick Scott, they've called Rick Scott already, winning re-election. Not a big surprise there, but he's by a similar margin, maybe 7 points instead of 8. But a lot of people predicted him to be a 3-point below 3-point margin below Trump, and it seems like he's kind of hanging tough in there with Trump just because of the number of undervotes on the Democrat side in that race. So I imagine maybe the same thing's happening there in Texas, where Allred didn't make the sale to maybe he made the sale to the base, but he didn't make the sale to left, just barely left of center voters. What are your thoughts?
Actually, I think he did.
Okay.
And Allred spent a ton of money, and I'm talking. My wife is a lover of reality TV and a lover of
Me too.
like things like the Today Show, which means I'm a lover of reality TV and of things like the Today Show.
What's your wife's favorite reality TV show?
Over the past 2 weeks was like a Colin Allred or a Ted Cruz ad. They spent a ton of money here, especially on Bravo. That's where the reality show was. She's a big Real Housewives, Below Deck, et al. Fan. But so there's a bunch of ads going to those places, big on abortion, and it does not seem to have rung home the way it did in 2022. Texas didn't do great when it came to we underperformed in 2022 because we didn't really know how Dobbs was going to impact things, and things just didn't quite. We kind of, kept the course when we were expecting to win some seats in the state house. I think we're probably going to end up winning a couple of seats in the state house. The ones I was most worried about, we seem to be blowing out in early voting, like by good margins, like 15, 20 points in a couple cases. And so I haven't even dug into the ones that might be marginal. There might be some dim held seats that we weren't expecting to do well in that we might be overperforming in. We might have some huge Republican margins going into Texas coming in the next session.
Garrett, in 2020, what do you have any data on the percentage of early voting in Texas compared to today? I think we're trending. I mean, at least here in Florida, is that the early voting in Florida, we're picking up steam as a Republican Party. I think we're pushing 65. Is Texas also? What's your situation? What's your feel for that?
So COVID, there were some court decisions that allowed early voting to be extended by, I think, like 33%. It ended up being 3 weeks instead of 2 weeks. So the early voting data, also COVID, I think we ended up being just shy of or right at our early voting from 2020. And we're expecting to have less than we had from normal election day voting. I think we're expecting as a percentage for our turnout to be lower than 2020, but we increased our voter rolls by like 3 million since then. So we're expecting a larger raw vote.
Fantastic. And Garrett, I heard some chatter about Ted Cruz getting angry with Mitch McConnell. Did you hear anything in Texas? There was a little bit of I guess a money spat where
Yeah. You know,
Yeah.
there's always that kind of thing that's going to pop up when people are starting to get anxious about what's happening at the end of the day. I think the Cruz campaign wanted to be more of a national focus on the campaign since a lot of Democrat dollars were coming in. I ended up seeing slightly more all red ads in a swing state, in a swing house, not really a swing household, but one that's effectively targeted as one. So I can understand the consternation. But with Cornyn up for re-election in 2 years and also up as one of the major candidates for Senate majority, I don't know how much of the Cruz consternation was more jockeying in that leadership race.
Yeah, that's how.
Which is a whole other conversation.
Obviously, we're not rooting for Cruz; we're rooting for Scott. But do you think it's a little selfish of Cruz to sit there and demand money from the party when we basically Cruz is going to win that race? But now we're taking, a good dollar in Texas, and we should probably put the good dollar in maybe, I don't know, Michigan, Ohio. How do you feel about that?
There is always that, but you have to keep in mind that when you looked at just like the raw 2020 map of where Democrats could possibly expand, which they would have to expand to hold the majority if they lost the presidency, which looks like I hope will happen. Then Texas was the best opportunity because it was like a +5 for Trump, and Cruz only won it by like 2 points, 2 point something last time, 2.3. So that was their best opportunity to expand from just a raw kind of percentage standpoint. Unfortunately for them, Texas is a very big state with a bunch of people. And contrary to the signs that say don't California, my Texas, all the people moving here from if you look at the macro data from all the polling, the people moving to Texas from California or from New York, I'm sure it's the same thing in Florida. They're the Republicans. They're the ones fleeing. The refugees. They're going to a conservative state, not because of some job opportunity, because they just need to get the hell out of the hellscape that is those liberal wastelands.
Yeah, everybody's welcome in Florida. You're more than welcome, but just please don't bring your politics. So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, unless your politics are conservative, and it's one of those things where if you look at it, it ends up being about a 60-40 or 2-to-1 split, where it's Republicans coming in. So yeah, you don't want the liberal policies coming in, but you have a bunch of Republicans coming in, and I think it's like, don't bring in your old allegiances. Let's figure out how we do things.
Yeah, you moved here
and
for
why
a
it
reason.
works
Yeah, you moved here for a
versus-
reason.
and then keep
so,
voting red up and down the ballot.
Absolutely.
So,
Garrett,
I think Texas is going to be a big one, and it's looking to me, as just from the numbers I'm seeing from the early voting data and from what's popping up, that we're going to have at least a split government, if not an outright trifecta at the federal level.
Well, from your mouth to God's ears, right? And
Yeah.
So I'm looking at I know that you're a Texas expert, but we all kind of play this game of, I'm looking at Ohio. Of course, Trump looks like he's winning by about 4 points, but the U.S. Senate race there is, I don't want to say virtually tied, but just as a raw vote total, 50,000 down for the Republican. So it seems like that could trend.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Sherrod Brown, underestimate Sherrod Brown at your own risk.
No, I agree.
That's my hottest take on Ohio is like Sherrod Brown is a fighter.
No, I've predicted that he would win re-election. I actually wrote during the summer in my Substack that I thought that Brown would be strong enough that could be a sneaky win. Ohio could be a sneaky win for Harris, just because the tail could wag the dog because of his strength. And certainly he spent, I think, as much as almost any U.S. Senate candidate in the country this year. So, right now in Pennsylvania, it looks like a lot of blue counties. That's what's kind of interesting to me is either early votes or blue counties are really coming in. We're looking at central Pennsylvania. None of the red counties are through that area are reporting. We have Philadelphia that are not completely done in any of these places, of course, but but they're showing 2-to-1 margins in both the presidential and the U.S. Senate race. So I don't think that we can trust any of those results there as of yet.
I did like Bernie Moreno when he spoke at the RNC. I thought he was well spoken. So I mean, if there's any, we're putting up good candidates out there. So in Ohio, and I think in Pennsylvania, we put up a good candidate in Pennsylvania. I like our candidate better than the last candidate, which we lost.
Exactly. So
But-
Garrett, what other predictions do you have for tonight? What's your prediction on the date that we find out the winner?
If we don't know by tonight, I think we'll know by pretty early tomorrow morning. I don't think we're going to be stuck at like we just need to wait on one state to know the
I tend
result.
to
It
agree
could
with
take
you.
a full
I
week for
think the
that state to
herd
come in.
of
I think so that's where I'm at with it. I think we'll probably know something tomorrow. And I think it's looking like it'll be a Trump victory. If it is, but if that's the thing, if it keeps if it keeps trending Trump the way I'm seeing it trending Trump, then maybe the Democratic machinations behind the scenes will try and halt it and do their own sort of election rigging.
I think
election denial.
I think the only way they do it is
um,
Pennsylvania. I mean, the only state that is so easily corruptible is Pennsylvania.
Right.
I mean, I think Wisconsin kind of got their stuff in order. I mean, Jamie, I don't know but I'm scared about Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I am too. We click on Virginia there and see what we're looking at here.
Numbers look good out of Virginia, but
yeah,
it's
Trump
only
is taking the
53.
lead
But it's
in
only
Virginia with 2 million cast.
Is anything coming in from Northern Virginia though? What is Arlington and Alexandria and Fairfax?
Yeah,
looking like?
I don't know that we're drilling down in this map that we're looking at into county by county data on Virginia. But
I mean,
there are certainly results
Virginia
from
today
Alexandria.
Was that there was light turnout at some places that usually have some stuff out the door. And I don't know. I don't think Virginia changed their early voting laws too much. There's kind of more of a habit of voting on election day. So if you're not seeing stuff on election day, then it's not good for Democrats, especially if you're not seeing those lines in Northern Virginia. And that's my experience as somebody who lived there for 5 years. And like you have to run up the margins in Arlington, Alexandria, Fairfax, et cetera, or you're just not going to win as a Democrat. And Youngkin and all the work the GOP has done in that state, I think might be making it more of a purple state for the next few years.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, if Trump loses, but say by 2 or 3 points out of Virginia, I think we're in good shape. We're in good shape.
Oh, if Trump loses Virginia by 3 points, he won the popular vote by like 50.
Yeah.
That's great. So you want him to win it because then he probably wants some other states that we weren't even thinking about. And that's what can happen in the state. That's what can happen. And that's why I'm not terribly worried about Pennsylvania because they might do some shenanigans. Is if things are going that way and there are shenanigans in Pennsylvania, one, it'll show us just exactly the lengths they're willing to go because they're going to do it in a thing that doesn't matter. And two, we're going to win in places where we didn't expect to win up and down the ballot because there was no money spent there. It was just basically the vibes and the passive national dollars that turned it out.
Yeah,
and that's when you know that you have a real wave election.
Yeah, and it's like Jamie and I were talking in the beginning of the show. You look at New Hampshire. So if New Hampshire goes at least close with under 2 points, I mean that's just like wow. It's starting to change. You know, the tide is moving into the red direction in a lot of places that it wasn't always there. Iowa is another one of those where we had that Jan Seltzer or something like that, the pollster.
But, the Ann Seltzer poll.
Yeah, so I'm curious to see. I mean, what was that? Was that just like, ooh, let's get voter suppression out, or?
So no. So Ann Seltzer
outline
bucks the trend and does not weight based off of a likely voter sample. My understanding is that she does it based off of a registered sample. Now, she's had far better luck over the past 20 years than most people have doing that. And she does a pretty good job of capturing stuff. You also got to keep in mind that Iowa's a really kind of weird state. It's historically, for 30 years, it had Chuck Grassley as one senator and Tom Harkin as another. Like like a
Pretty incredible.
Reagan conservative and a FDR like liberal. They have like what's referred to as farmer populism from the Midwest. That's kind of popular. It's how Daschle of all people won in South Dakota for so long. You have that kind of ethos of a whatever else, and you also have a lot of federal dollars coming in for subsidies for farming. So there's a lot of minutia for people who end up understanding Iowa. And then you have the abortion stuff, and Iowa just passed a abortion ban via the legislature within the past few months. So unlike other states which have kind of pushed that out of their system and kind of got it out and got it resolved with where the state wants it to be, more or less, Iowa's still in the throes of that, and you end up, I think, saw a good reflection from a lot of folks of that kind of Dobbs abortion debate kind of rebounding, and getting some stuff from those suburban white women from like Des Moines, Ames, Iowa City, Cedar Rapids, etc.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. We're looking at kind of a Google map here, and it's funny because they have New Hampshire as too close to call, which is a blue state. But then, the early results in Missouri and Kansas are, as you speculate, early votes probably. And, they have them kind of shaded blue, Harris up, too close to call. And, it's just not as you said, as election day is, a lot of these folks, and probably about half our audience is from Florida. And, we have so many ways to vote early or mail. And some of these states are, just early voting and election day voting, and not as many opportunities for mail. And, and so you're seeing Democrats vote early, Republicans generally vote election day. So it takes a little while for those results to come in. So, like I said, just the very first results, but the map is on that Google map at least, which is a really unfair representation of what's likely to happen the rest of the night.
Well, and I think it's one of those things where you have to have a little bit of a grain of salt until you start getting some big numbers in. That's why I was texting folks when the Fort Bend numbers, my county numbers came in. I was like, is this all of early voting or just whatever? Because if it's just some, I don't want to whatever. I was like, no, this is all early voting. They released all early voting at 7, or they tried to, and they did it this year. And so that way you at least have that understanding. Like you said, when it comes to early voting, there are different types of people, and it ends up being kind of a partisan split that's slightly different when it comes to who's voting early or who's voting by mail. And I think it's really important if you're looking at a state to see if they have